Brandon Kellum is an American musician, author, and philanthropist from Phoenix, Arizona, best known as the vocalist of the metalcore band American Standards. He is characterized by his charismatic live performances and philosophical lyrical content. He is an advocate for local artists, businesses, and charitable causes. Ha ha ha! I didn't even have to write an intro because this motherfucker has a Wikipedia page! Welcome to Getting Stoked. I am Matthew Slusser, as always, and with me today I have the very phenomenal and fucking legendary Brandon Kellum of American Standards.
Don't talk me up too much. People are going to expect something. I like people's expectations low, and I come in hot after that.
Oh, dude, speaking of expectations, I had a fucking a ring pop today for the first time in like a decade, and it was a complete letdown. They're like... I for some reason I remember them being really good, and they were absolutely disgusting.
It's kind of like you remember like the Fun Dip,
and
you just like have to figure out how to ration the dip to a little like stick ratio, or else you just left with a gross stick, and who's gonna just eat that?
I know, like I was the weird kid though. I would eat after a sucker. I would eat the fucking paper.
That explains a little bit.
Yeah, it does. That was the weird kid in the back of the classroom.
How about those lips? Remember those like wax lips?
Yeah, those are gross.
Who the hell ate those wax lips? Like, what was the deal? They didn't look cool and they didn't taste good.
No,
it's like said edible on the end, but it's like as edible as a crayon is edible.
Yeah, they were not good. Same or with I wasn't a fan of the little things you tear off the paper and eat because you'd always get paper. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be that big of a deal because I ate paper anyway. But like for some reason, I drove the line with those. Yeah, I was really let down. I still had this awful aftertaste in my mouth. But your wonderful IPA is washing it away.
Well, there you go. Cheers to that.
Lumberyard Brewing Company. Fantastic.
But nostalgia will always let you down, man.
Fuck.
You try to go back and relive something that you're like, this was awesome, and then you just ruin it forever.
Dude, Good Charlotte's Young and the Hopeless.
Yeah. I went back recently and listened to Lost Prophets. Granted, all the stuff that happened with them is a whole different story. But I'm like, I remember somewhat liking some of these songs. I'm like, this noise is like just nails on a chalkboard.
Yeah,
God,
not good.
How did I listen to this?
I know. I have a nostalgia playlist of, like, I had this really crazy winter in 2008 where I had all this music I was listening to at that time, and most of it was new to me at the time, and it was very emotional. And anytime you have an emotional time in your life, the music you listen to sticks with you, and you can always go back to that.
All dashboard, right? Saves the day.
Well, I have it on my Spotify, and it is so fucking appallingly embarrassing. Like, there's some stuff on there you can still kind of listen to, but I've got It's Not Your Fault, New Found Glory era, like not even like the cool old stuff. But like
we're listening to this afterwards, right? That's actually going to be the sound bed for this whole podcast. We'll fix it in post.
So you guys played in Flagstaff recently, right?
We have a show in Flagstaff. Actually, we did play. Actually, now that you say it, we played in October in Flagstaff.
October, okay.
Yeah, so we do an annual like Halloween show in Flagstaff that originally was a one-time thing like 3 years ago, and then now it's just become a thing that we've done every year.
Gotcha.
So we do this little run of like 3 or 4 shows. Starts in Flagstaff, loops around to normally New Mexico, Texas, and comes back.
That's awesome.
So yeah, we did that, but we're actually playing in Flagstaff next week too. So
see, what is that like playing? I've played in Flagstaff a couple times, but the scene in Flagstaff, from what I've seen, is very like kind of odd and disjointed. Like the Phoenix scene, the Flagstaff scene is very strange.
It's weird, man, because I feel like every time I go to Flagstaff, it's different bands but made up of the same people.
Yeah,
and that's like kind of like I think the result of when you have a small Flagstaff isn't small by any means, but it's smaller than obviously the Valley, but it's also made up primarily of college kids. So you got people that are up there and they start this band, and as soon as school's out, then a few of them leave, and then a few of them stay around and start another band.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's hard for any of them to really gain any traction. So none of them last for a while. There's not a lot of all ages places. The only place that's been around for a while now has been
the
Hive.
Yeah, that's
James.
where we played.
Yeah, James is great at the Hive. He's really been helping us out for years now, booking us. But outside of that, it's mainly like house shows are what does well there.
Yeah.
Or if you play 21 and over crowds, but depending on what style band you are, a lot of bands kind of thrive off of people that aren't 21 yet, you know?
The house show is the most beautiful DIY, like, statement to DIY. I love
Absolutely,
it. I fucking love house shows, especially being in, like, my band's in the indie scene, and the indie scene, at least when we first started, wasn't as, like, Mantooth wasn't all over it.
Yeah.
And fucking most of the big promoters who are fantastic just weren't all in the indie scene was mainly all ages clubs.
Got, like, Trunk Space is, like, pretty much
51 and all that kind of shit.
Yeah.
So it was always house shows or like really weird like bring your own power strip shows. So like you're gonna be playing in some
You gotta bring your
backyard.
own power strip regardless.
Yeah.
That's kind of gonna. It's like power strip and duct tape are the two things you need at a show, right?
Yeah, dude, the Hive is wonderful. We played the Hive in November and it was fucking freezing.
Yeah,
but
and the place is small, so it's like if you get 30 people in there, you've got a good looking show.
it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was so wild. That was our first real Flagstaff experience.
Nice.
It was killer.
And it's cool too because it's right off like the main strip, so there's a lot of cool like bars and restaurants
Yeah.
around there. We always end up at this nightclub, and it's a legitimate dance club,
Yeah.
just playing like obnoxious like hip hop and EDM. But for some reason, we go there every time and have a blast, and normally have too much fun there. And we go afterwards, and none of us are really into that scene. It's just like it's so different, and when you're in a different town, you push yourself to try something different. You're like, I guess I'm not just gonna go crash in the hotel tonight. I'm gonna go out and do something.
Have you been to the Orpheum?
Yeah, we actually played Orpheum.
You played the Orpheum?
We played the Orpheum with Every Time I Die.
Fuck. Okay.
A year ago, I think.
Fuck. Okay. So we're gonna jump to a question I have way later on because you just mentioned that.
Yeah.
What the fuck was playing opening for Every Time I Die like?
It was everything you would hope playing for your favorite band
Really?
would be and more.
Good.
And it's like we won't say that often, or I won't say that often. Like so often we get to play these like cool like 10-year or 15-year like anniversary shows or like reunion shows. We've done so many of those recently. But like normally it's like this band I always looked up to, and then you're like you have this vision in your head, like you're gonna go to the show and you're gonna meet them and have this really deep conversation. You're gonna share some beers and hang out. And normally it's just like, hey, I'm really excited to be playing with you guys. Yeah, thanks for opening for us. And then like you guys
trailer.
did a good show, and that's all. And we've had that experience a lot of times, you know. And nothing against that, because when you're on the road for a long time, I could understand, it's sometimes you just want your own space.
For sure.
Every Time I Die, though, is before we got there, we got Flagstaff early, so I think we were there probably 5 or 6 hours early. We went up to a bar, and Keith was at the bar just, drinking whiskey at the bar by himself. So we got to hang out at the bar with Keith for a bit. He went actually and got a tattoo next door with one of our friends.
Nice.
And then during the show, both Andy and Keith picked up T-shirts. They had a new EP coming out. It's for Record Store Day. They had it was right after. Put me on the spot here. It was right after the EP was called Salem, actually. The Salem EP, right after From Parts Unknown.
Yeah.
And they actually gave us that a few weeks before it even
That's
came
awesome.
out. They shouted us out on stage. They said like American Standards killed it and everything. And then afterwards, they invited us back to their hotel where there's a bar. We just got a drink all night with them,
That's
and watch
fucking
like wrestling videos. Like
Dude.
That's more than you could ever
that's
expect.
so much more. They're
so
fantastic.
like, yeah, as much as I have respect for Every Time I Die, one of my favorite bands. After that, it just made me think like this is really what a band should be. You know, if you can make that experience, like you're gonna I'm gonna remember that forever. I'm gonna tell other people this story probably 100 more times after this.
Dude,
You know,
that's amazing. Like
So-
they're one of the bands that broke me through to metal music.
yeah, they're a good. I mean, they're a good band for that because they're a band that like you can be someone that doesn't listen to super heavy stuff and still appreciate the hooks,
Yeah,
and then you
it's
can
super
dig into
catchy.
their stuff, and get into the more techie stuff.
Yeah.
It's well rounded, And I think like you need bands like that to get in like the heavy stuff. Like you don't go straight from like listening to like say Newfound Glory and then the next day listen to Cow Decapitation or something.
Exactly.
Like you
For
want
sure.
some kind
Fuck,
of hook.
you don't
Like,
even go from Slayer to Cow Decapitation.
Yeah.
Like there's so many steps before you get to grind.
This is true. I'm not gonna lie. The first two bands I started listening to that were like heavier, like besides my brother's music. I grew up on like stuff that my brother's 8 years older than me, so I'd listen to, AC/DC and Led Zeppelin and Pantera and stuff like that. But like I felt like the music that was mine when I was getting into my teens and in high school was things like Linkin Park and
for sure, of
Deftones and
course.
System of a
The
Down.
new metal scene.
Yeah, the new metal scene was huge when I was in high school, so that was what got me into like my own style of music. And then I started branching off and heard about Poison the Well and Every Time I Die, and that's when I really got into like hardcore.
Yeah, dude. Every time that fucking the Big Dirty was the album that I heard, and
Yeah.
I think by Werewolf I was like, oh yeah, my life's over. This
go.
this is fucking amazing.
The riffs, man. Like I am all about the riffs. Like even today, like when Corey and the guys, our guitarists and everything, when we're writing riffs, I'm always just like, all right, like let's just write something that just feels cool to play, something that grooves,
Uh-huh. For sure. Yeah, dude, that's awesome. I've been on this crazy metal kick lately where so my buddy and my neighbor started listening to, or they're Amon Amarth fans.
Okay.
And I got really into Amon Amarth from them. And then I have this real addictive personality with music where I find one thing and I go up down this obsessive rabbit hole. And by next week, I know more about your favorite bands than you did because it's all I'm fucking doing.
I'm just going to start like saying names of bands that aren't even real bands and get you out there searching for them.
Yeah, exactly. But I've been listening to like a lot of death stuff, but like a lot of like Behemoth and fucking like Goat Whore and just like the craziest music I could possibly find. And I'm like having an amazing time with metal music right now.
Have you heard that Frankenstein poster?
What?
They're crazy, man. Frankenstein poster, they're killer.
Dude, how the fuck did you get a Wikipedia page?
The band?
You have one.
The band actually. So the band came up. I don't know, a few years ago.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's so. A few years ago, we started focusing on like. I feel like everything I've done, like as far as musically, like I've just stumbled my way around and felt in the dark until I found out what worked, and I've failed a shit ton, and I'm still failing. But I am getting smarter and better and more efficient. So the time I'm spending is spent doing things that seem to have better impact, and I continue to do that. So a few years ago, we got into doing a lot of like blogs. And websites and zines, like DIY, just like literally the paper old school punk zines and stuff like that. Like I would just actively look for those on Facebook, on Google and things like that. And I just started reaching out, and through doing that, once we started getting some features, it almost snowballed to where we were getting a lot of people were reaching out to us. Whereas like I was always reaching out to these blogs, then people started reaching out to us, and then that's when I noticed, okay, now we've got this whole Wikipedia, and some of it's right and some of it's wrong, but it's got a shit ton of sources on there. Some of my buddies will go on there occasionally and be like, yeah, like I put this random line in there, and then we'll just sit there and watch it and be like, how long did this stay here for?
Yeah, it's crazy. When I always do research before I book somebody, and I pulled up your name and it was like fucking a Wikipedia page. I was like, shit, that's hilarious. That's like
hopefully it's all lies too.
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was hilarious. I was like, fuck, man. Like I feel like that's something that people should, because I tried to make myself a fake Wikipedia page in my first band when I was like 15. It was up for 24 hours and then it was gone. And I was so proud. I was like, dude, it's so easy.
Do they like flag this stuff quick? Because like our friends like will literally put stuff on there and they're like, dude, we were just messing with your Wikipedia so hard. So like if people are listening to this, just go on there and spam it and see what happens. I think that was
during the time where Wikipedia was getting all of that bad shit from like teachers and professors, like don't use Wikipedia, don't use Wikipedia.
People are citing it on their college papers.
Yeah, and Wikipedia was probably just like overcompensating so much to make sure that they're like, no, check every single article. That becomes like,
Well, if we have one, and apparently if I have one, I feel like anybody should be able to get them now. You've got a podcast. Where's your Wikipedia?
Yeah, where's my fucking Wikipedia page?
What do they call them? Wiki editor people, where they are. They need to write you a Wikipedia after this.
Yeah, they fucking do. I need to figure that out. So, let's see. Where do I want to jump in from here? So, I fucking love this question. What was the first tour you ever went on like?
The first tour that I played
ever.
Not with standards. It was yeah. So the first band that I played in that actually toured was it was called Movie Script Ending. It was, at the time we were trying to go for like an Alexis on Fire. Huh? Oh, was it on there? They go deep. Named after a Death Cab song.
Nice.
So it was like trying to be this ripoff of the first Alexis on Fire self-titled album.
Got it.
Mixed with like A to B Life, Me Without You.
Okay.
So we were doing that for a while, and this is like MySpace days. So we're like, all right, let's start touring. And this is before like smartphones were popular. None of us had a smartphone. So I actually remember. Like me, I don't even think I had a computer at the time. This is like, I'm my
word processor.
I come from a very poor family, I'll put it that way, and we were very behind the times too. So this is like 2000. Our bass player Chris, he had a computer, so we went over to his house. We map quested the directions for the entire tour. We printed out this like huge like stack of maps and like put them in like Trapper Keeper,
like the Bible.
Yeah, exactly. And the bummer about touring like that back then was like when you tour like that and you miss the turn or something's wrong on the map, like you're not getting to the show
unless you notice.
Unless you stop 4 or 5 times and ask people nonstop. So touring was literally just printing out this huge thing, writing down all the promoters' numbers. When things fell through, I will say though, in the MySpace days, it was so much easier to book. Like we booked so much stuff on the road.
Yeah.
Because I think the first tour we did was like 2 weeks, and we did it through the Midwest. And
that's a good first tour, though.
Yeah, I mean, 2 weeks. I'm honestly like, I went on this curve where like we started out small, 2 weeks. We built out to where we were doing months, and then now I love going back to like 2 weeks is perfect because
really
at 2 weeks, like everything feels fresh and new. After 2 weeks, you get into this routine, and like I hate routine, so it just feels like a job at that point. Like,
and especially if you have a full-time job,
yeah,
like
yeah,
2
very
weeks.
true.
2 weeks is doable.
Very
like
true.
I work at a school. I get summers off if I don't want to work summer school.
There you go.
Perfect.
That's perfect for being in a band.
Exactly. Perfect for being in a band. And I'm off every day at 3:00. So it works really well.
Yeah.
But I didn't do that for fucking ever, man. I remember like I needed to be at work. Like 2 weeks is rough. I mean, 2 weeks is about perfect. When you ask your boss for 2 weeks off, that's a vacation.
Yep.
3 weeks is like that's almost a month. Like one more weekend, that's a month.
Yeah, you know, and well, back then too, I guess about the job thing, I was working at a Kmart actually, the first Kmart in Phoenix, 43rd Indian School, which is closed now. So I'd been working there for a few years, and I was at the point where, and it's like kind of no one cares job, you know. So it's like they would let me take off as much as I wanted, whenever I wanted, and I took advantage of that. And also that was a point in my life where, I mean, because I'm like 16, 17 at this time, right? So that's the point in my life that if they said I couldn't take off a week for a tour, even if I was paying to go on the tour and not getting paid, I'd be like, you know, screw it, I'll just take this tour anyways. I'll lose my job for this, you know. And yeah, so we did that tour. I think the first tour, actually, a lot of the dates fell through. And since it was MySpace days, like we just went on the venues and bands from those cities, like on their MySpace pages. We just like browsed their top 8s and went and found other bands and venues, and we rebooked it really quick. I even remember we'd go up to the mall and like go into the Hot Topic or something, and just be like, hey, where's the nearest venue? And we'd go to the venue, drive up, and be like, hey, we're on the road right now, can we play? And they didn't get that as often as they probably do now. So they'd be like, yeah, just jump on, you know, and you'd still get paid like a little bit of money.
That's fantastic.
So that was my first experience. And I mean, like, going back to nostalgia, I look back at that now, and I always think about like, wow, we really didn't know what we had when we had that type of environment. Like, you know, how easy it was to promote with MySpace when you weren't fighting this Facebook algorithm, when you just post your bulletin, your horde train on MySpace.
Bulletin,
and then you get out to everybody,
Top
right?
5 fans.
Yeah, it was a different world, man. And then it's not to say it's better or worse now, because I don't want to be like the old guy that's now is like, everything sucks. It's just so different, and you've got to stay on top of it, because if you don't stay on top of it, you spend all this time, you spend all this money, and you put all your heart into something, then you put it out there, and you're like, well, that didn't land at all. It's very like discouraging.
That's
you know?
the thing, man. Because the internet's been around for a minute now, they're starting to figure out how to work you. Like, as opposed to MySpace days was way more organic. Today, you do have to fight the algorithms. You have to figure out, like, fuck, I know that everybody's not going to see my post. I have to figure out how to post the right thing when and what time, and it's such a pain in the ass. Whereas before, it's just like, bam.
Yeah, it's almost, I mean, that's a full-time job in itself.
Yeah,
and there's an art to doing that. And the bummer of it is it takes so much damn time that it takes away time for it you should be spending on actually your art itself, you know?
But it does make it a little bit more. I mean, the internet, at least right now, I don't know. I want to say forever it will be, but I don't know. It's still very much DIY. It gave the power back to the creator,
absolutely,
in a big way. Some people, you know, Metallica might argue that it took it away, but like, fucking for people working from the ground up, it's totally like, instead of hand pasting zines, which some people still do. We've done that in the past. It's super cool. Give out at shows.
Yeah.
But instead of doing that, instead of having to sit on the floor with like 5 of your friends, which is cool, you can just like be at work and like just like get it, you know, taken care of like right then.
Yeah, yeah. It's just it's a different world. It's a different way to connect, and I think it's like, I mean, if it wasn't for this, you wouldn't have people that are YouTubers that are literally sitting in front of a camera and they're making tons of money doing it, you know? Or even podcasters. There's podcasters now that they're talking about, you know, movies or music or whatever else, and now they're actually doing live shows and traveling around the United States or around the world.
That's amazing.
Having people come watch them talk in front of a microphone.
Yeah.
So it's like that never would have been the case back in the day. So it's like, that's why I say it's no better or worse. It's just different. And the people complaining about it are the people that don't want to figure it out, you know, the people that don't want to try something different, and they want to go do the old things. Something about us for American standards, and I don't know if this helps us or hurts us or just makes me lose my hair even earlier than I would otherwise. But we try to apply a little bit of both. Like, I try to stay ahead of the curve when it comes to everything. But at the same time, we still have paper flyers. I mean, in my car right now, I have a stack of demo CDs that like we'll lay out at the Zia Records. We'll put out at tattoo shops. So it's like not a lot of people are going for that. So it's easier to cut through with something that not everybody's fighting for. With like putting up something on Bandcamp or anywhere else, it's like you got hundreds of people uploading their albums every day. So to cut through that noise, it's a lot harder than to say, wow, there's actually someone that has like a CD here that I can just grab for free.
Yeah.
And like maybe the quantity of people doing that is much less, but it's more impactful for that.
And that's my thing with Bandcamp is I'm a very strict believer in making the digital music free on Bandcamp.
Yep.
Because if I'm like, for instance, I'll be like, so I help out at 51 West.
Yep.
And like my girlfriend works sound, and then whenever she's there, I work concessions in the back just for fuck, because I know I'm just gonna be there anyway. Like she's there, it's a free ticket to whatever local show's going on. I might as well make myself useful.
Get to meet some people, hang
out.
Yeah,
exactly. So I hang out in the concessions, which usually aren't super busy, and I'm back there on my laptop, and I'm just looking for music. So I'll go on Bandcamp, and I'll just throw in a tag and just be like, black metal, blah, and I just find, and then whatever's free, I'll probably like download or check out. But if it's not free, I'm just gonna scroll right past it because there's so much that like is free. And with Spotify, if you're not on Spotify and on Bandcamp, you're charging money, and no one knows who you are yet, then I'm not going to fucking listen to you. Or I'm not going to download it.
It's just like this weird mentality, I think. Like, that's people trying to apply the old way to the new environment. And the thing is, like, if you're going to spend money on something to support it, you're going to spend money to support it regardless.
Absolutely.
So even if they put it up for free, with the choose your pay, you might throw a few bucks or something.
Absolutely, yeah. We get it all the time.
Or you'll buy your merch or buy something else. So if you're going to give them money, you're going to give it regardless. And if you still really want it, and they're charging money for it, you're just going to find somewhere to get it for free. Because the thing is, if it's on Bandcamp, it's somewhere else for free. So if you're going to get it for free, you're going to get it for free regardless. If you're going to spend money on the band, you're going to find a way to spend money on the band.
And it's been like that for nearly a decade now.
But you're not going to spend money on the band you've never heard of that won't even let you listen to their music.
Now the thing is, the music is free, but you have to, it makes you want to pay for shit, where you get the music for free, and I'm really into this band. I'm going to go to the show. Boom, there's a ticket right there. I'm going to buy a shirt. I'm going to vinyl, fucking coffee cup, like something else. Like, people are always going to consume regardless. The music is almost at this point like, it's not really this way, but it's almost like a commercial for the other shit that you have, if you're really thinking about it in the most like business standpoint.
Absolutely. And the merch is where bands are making money. That's why you've got bands. Yeah, that's why you've got bands that were around 20, 30 years ago that are now getting back on the road because they're not making money off their album sales anymore. Yeah. They have to get back out there and actively sell their merch and make money off their ticket prices. So you're right. It costs, $3-4 to make a t-shirt. You sell it for $10 or $15. That's where your money to put back into recording and touring comes from. And no one's going to spend $15 on a t-shirt from a band where they haven't even heard a song because that band wants to charge $10 on Bandcamp.
Yeah, exactly. When they can just go scroll down the list and find 1,000 other local bands or small bands or underground bands who will gladly hand it to you for free, sweatingly. Please take my music.
Exactly. Yeah. No, and it's sad because I get it. I get as being I spent my time on this, I spent my money on this, so I deserve something. But you have to understand what would you do to get the music, or what are you actually actively going out and spending money on?
Yeah.
If you're not doing that yourself, how do you expect other people to do it? It's kind of I think a lot, and we talked about Yabium a little bit before this, but I kind of do this monthly article on Yabium talking about just kind of lessons learned, basics about being in a band and everything. And one thing that I mentioned was a lot of bands will go out on their first tour to a city they've never played or a state they've never played, and then tell the promoter, you have to pay me $400 or $500. It's no, you're choosing to go to this city, and then you're probably not going to draw anybody. And you want them to pay out of pocket to take a chance on you? You should be grateful for what they give you. Yes, you should put a value towards what you have. So start promoting in that city before you even hit there. With the internet, you can definitely target stuff and promote in the city. And if you draw people and you can prove that you have a value there, then you're worth what that value is. But you can't tell someone to go out of pocket and spend a crazy amount of money on you when you're not going to give anything back to them.
Yeah, and I feel there are two things with that. One, the music video is one of the most important things for touring because you can just put it on anything. No one has to follow a link. They click on the video, boom, they can hear a snippet of your song and be distracted with a visual at the same time. Gold. Perfect way to do it. Secondly, though, and I, again, hanging out at 51 West as much as I do and constantly, and obviously being on the road, and I've met tons of other touring bands. And if you're a touring band who is just starting out and you're not humble, then like you're fucked. Nothing's ever gonna
Yeah.
work for you. You're always gonna be upset. You're gonna feel like you didn't get what you deserved, and you're gonna end up just like a fucking angry, bitter dude working at Starbucks in LA because it didn't fucking work
And
out.
the
You know what
band,
I mean?
the band's gonna break up, or you're gonna go through
Yeah.
a million lineup changes, and that's how it is. Yeah, you
Humility
can't.
is so important.
Yeah, you can't be entitled to like I deserve this because I put this out there. People should be like flocking
Mm-hmm.
to talk to me and buying my album and giving me money. Like that's just old school thinking.
And I think we're kind of like, I feel like, at least in the Phoenix scene, which is the only really real frame of reference that I have, like on being on the ground floor of, it kind of cuts through the bullshit a little bit because it's almost like there's a direct line. Like you have all these bands over here who you can tell their mommy and daddy bought them everything and everything's paid for. There's a very clear line between those guys and the guys who are like really humble and are just like working their asses off to be in a band. There's not a whole ton of gray area anymore. It's really obvious.
True, yeah,
At
that
least
makes it
if
easy.
you're in a band, you can you smell from a mile away.
Yeah.
But I've noticed that with the internet, it kind of leveled the playing field a little bit and kind of like, all right, well, you guys are over here and we're over here and, whatever. So, I don't know. It's wild.
Like the only thing I would like add to that is like it's kind of, it also depends on what you're going for and like what kind of people your music attracts or your image or
Absolutely.
anything attracts, because there is this like still this subset of people that like for some reason it's kind of like when you see someone that's dating someone that's clearly like an asshole and you're like, why are they with them?
Yeah.
But something about that attracts them. Something like there's still like these people that have these rock star mentalities, and they're normally not the big bands that are out there touring and busting their asses. They're normally these small local bands that aren't doing a whole hell of a lot.
Yeah.
And they're like, I just got back from tour. And it's like,
Yeah.
dude, you played one show in Tucson, and they're like, we need like a like going away show and a welcome back show and like donate money so we can be on the road. And it's like, you're not a rock star, so don't act like a rock star. But some people still attract to that because they think,
agree.
well, like this band. It's kind of like when you have that confidence. They're like, well, this band thinks that there's something, so maybe they are something.
Dude, confidence goes such a stupid long way.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But yeah, there's young bands playing like classic or their take on what's essentially classic rock.
Yep.
Like playing their dicks on stage and acting like they're the biggest thing ever, and they do attract fans that way, and it's all confidence.
Yep.
Like it's easier to gain a following like that than it is to be a ridiculously brilliant musician who stands still with his shoulders up to his ears playing and be playing the best music ever, but like he is way less likely to go far than the really confident hack.
I will say, I may land somewhere in between there because I don't got a hell lot of talent.
That's where the truth is. That's where it is. That's where you want to be. You want to be right in the middle.
Because I'll say I always actively say this, like me especially, but American Standards as a whole, we're not out there shredding. We're not like the most crazy like crazy musicians that you're gonna see,
Yeah.
right? Mitch maybe on drums, he's insane. He's a whole different level. But the rest of us, like we're out there, we're average players. We could write a decent song, but we put our heart in everything we do.
Yeah.
And we feel good about it. We feel confident about it because it's something that we know is true to us, and we're not faking that confidence. The confidence comes from it being something that we really want to do. So I do appreciate, and this is a different flavor of that, I do appreciate when a band is up there and they might not be the band that has the most expensive gear,
of course,
or have the most choreographed show, or this like, this crazy cool looking photo where they all look like, insert whatever good looking
Yeah.
person you could think of. But they still go out there and they really play with all their heart. And that's like, I think that's something that's admirable too. Because I think that a lot of times, like, especially now, we put such a value, or our musicians put such a focus on, like, I've got like the coolest guitar pedals and I've got the most expensive amp. And I went to this nice studio and I spent like, weeks and months and years, and I lined up every drum hit perfectly and the music sounds so perfect. But at the end of it, it's like, yeah, it sounds perfect. It doesn't even sound human. Like, it sounds like a machine made this, and there's no emotion in it. So, like, all the emotion and all the excitement you had when you first thought of that riff has been stripped by all the time and thought you put into it. Like, there's something to be said about someone that can just put out something that's not perfect, but it's still, like, art in itself,
Yeah, I agree. Our biggest mistake was sitting on the songs that we did for as long as we did. For our first album, I would say I think there's like 13 or 14 tracks on it. 10 of them are 2 years old.
Yeah.
Like and not just 2 years old, but like the first 2 years of being a band old, where you're playing fucking like 50 shows in a year and constantly playing the same goddamn songs constantly.
So you're already tired about from
like,
by that time.
Yeah, well, while we were recording it, we already had a whole new batch of songs that we were excited about for what would end up being the next EP or like the upcoming album that we're still working on. But it's like, we just like, all right, well, these songs are good. We need to just get them out there and basically get rid of them.
Yep.
We need to, and that mentality is so fucking soul crushing when you're recording, and you have to be so meticulous and perfect. And but then like the EP that we just put out, those songs were like 7 or 8 months old at the time. We just went in as soon as they were like right where we wanted them. We went in and fucking put them out, and then we like released them not even like a month after recording them, and we were still excited about it.
Yeah, and you feel good about it.
Yeah,
like there's something about that. Like I look at all the albums that still like resonate with me from when I was younger, and even like live shows that I've seen, and normally they're like something that if someone today heard it for the first time, like, what is this? You know, like, I mean, going back to like Alexisonfire, like their first self-titled album is like traditionally, like by today's standards, it's pretty horribly recorded. The vocals are very raw and like just abrasive and obnoxious at times. It's not like super lined up, you know. And there's a lot of things that if they look back on that, I'm sure they would do differently. Yeah. But there's still something about that moment in time when I heard it that made it stick with me and where I was in my life, you know? And I think the same thing could be said as a musician. When you write something, like you may say those songs that you wrote a few years ago, like you would do them differently. But when you first wrote them, there was an emotion behind them. And if you capture that emotion on tape, you'd probably still think of it just as fondly today. Although you may have changed things, like it's still something there. And I think that about all our releases. I mean, I go back and listen to like our first release was in 2011. And there's so many things that I would do differently if I had those songs today. But like there's also this quality that if I try to do it, like it would lose everything. Like it would lose any spark it had because it would be me overthinking something. I think I don't know if I've heard this saying a lot too, but it's like there's an importance on putting out stuff even if you feel it's not ready, just continually putting out stuff and like learning from it. And there's a different type of value you get from that than sitting on something for a long time and then making sure it's perfect. You know, it's kind of like, I think YouTubers say this a lot, like it's better to put out something every week than put out one video like every 6 months and make it a really good video.
Absolutely.
People will connect with it more. And the longevity of anything is so small right now because like you said, on Spotify, you might pull up 10 new bands in a day and you don't even remember the first 3 or 4 you listen to. So you should really continually think of how you can challenge yourself to get stuff out there and you know, get new ears.
And I think one of the biggest mistakes, and I've definitely made it too, that bands will make is like, you can't George Lucas your old music and try to re-record it later on. Like that's another mistake that we made. Like we had our first EP in our eyes was like fucking garbagely recorded. We did it with one handheld mic, multi-tracked it, and that was it. And
you also know we're listening to this after, right?
Yeah, sure, and we can. And then so we did it that way, and we didn't. There's no fucking mixing or mastering. It was like gain on Audacity, and that was it. And that's how we did it, and still to this day, like that's what people like the most. And we took a few songs and we're like, you know what, this song, these like 3 songs didn't really get their due, I think, on the first one. Let's redo it with the technology that we're using on the debut album, and they just fucking blow ass in comparison. like because now that I'm far away from it, those are songs that like we don't even play a lot of those anymore. It was so long ago. Now that my head's completely removed from the situation, I fully realize like, we should have never done that. They were fine the way that they were originally. That's what they were supposed to be. Move forward.
It's like seeing a cover band at a bar play some songs that you potentially like from another band, right? It's like there's something that's not quite there.
Yeah.
And it's because they're trying to recreate a moment or recreate an experience that wasn't true and genuine to them, you know? And that's why I think the beauty of art comes from is something that isn't perfect, right? Because like art is supposed to be a reflection of life.
Yeah.
And like life is definitely not perfect. So like why would you want to see like something that's just so like polished and everything?
That's true. I mean, at the time that you record something, it should also reflect where you are when you're recording that. Like if you're recording that in a sweaty bedroom in Chandler with a single fucking handheld microphone, it should sound like that. It should reflect that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So tell me about Heart-Shaped Canvas.
So Heart-Shaped Canvas is actually something. It started, I guess, before American Standards, when Cody and I first started. Cody was our initial guitarist and really the guy that started American Standards. And when we first started talking about American Standards, what we wanted to do with it, I think we had both, I was 25 at the time. He was 22-ish. We both wanted to do something that wasn't about getting out there and touring nonstop and playing shows nonstop. We just wanted to be able to do something that was like a platform to get people together and build a community.
Okay.
And we knew that with that community, we wanted to do things like compilation albums. We wanted to do charity shows and other things like volunteer events and things like that. So a lot of American Standard's beginning was within that. You know, the first couple of things that we put out before we even put out albums, we're just putting one song on a compilation album with a bunch of other bands, both local and throughout the United States, and then it actually expanded to all over the world. Putting out those compilation albums and doing them for different charity events. So we did like American Cancer Foundation, and we did Teen Lifeline, which is actually a local suicide hotline. We did one for Katie Wagner, which was someone that went to the guy's school, all the other guys with the exception of me, their school, that was diagnosed with cancer. So we did a lot of things like that to kind of raise money, because the idea was, let's stop making the focus of being in a band or being an artist on us, and let's start putting it on other people. And let's not only say these are the things that matter to us, but what matters to everybody. So we used to do these like polls online on Facebook and say like, what's a cause that you really believe in, and tell us about it. And we want to see what you think the next thing should be about. So Heart-Shaped Canvas was just kind of an extension of that. So when American Standards did get going, that was kind of the moniker we used for it. And we've done other things throughout, I guess, the years, even after Cody had left the band and even within the last year. But I really want to get back into it as much as we used to.
God,
now I think
fall in love with you, man.
I
So fucking
talk
sweet.
I talk about it less and I do it more,
Okay,
which is
got it.
good, but it also loses some of the spirit from it, because the spirit was really to be a community and to make people get together for something that was more than themselves. And now, like an example of something that we did throughout the last few months, we would buy we would go to like the dollar store and buy things like socks and peanut butter and gloves and like, you know, toothpaste and toothbrushes and stuff. And I bought this huge order of like 50 like black backpacks on Amazon, and we just stuff those and go around downtown and give them to the homeless. And we would do those things, and I think that's rewarding. I like doing that, but it was like really me doing it, my girlfriend to an extent helping as well, and not as much of the community doing it. So like I said, I want to get back into really involving other people into it as well.
Man, that's what a contrary idea to what so many people in a rock band is. Like, let's shift the focus, guys. I think we should shift the focus from us a little bit. Like
we've got to get people to ignore like how not good looking we are and untalented we are, and then maybe they'll focus on other things. Like, yeah, but I guess they're doing good stuff, so maybe they're okay. That's kind of like that's actually our exact strategy when it comes to playing live shows. Like, we give people one hell of a live show, and make them forget about what we sound like altogether. Because as soon as they leave the doors, they probably forget, this, the drummer missed this beat and the guitarist came out of tune here. They remember like this dude was, crawling up on the roof and stuff like that.
Yeah, dude, Freddie Mercury was fucking horrifying looking.
Yeah,
and he's still like remembered as one of the idols of everything.
Exactly, or Iggy Pop, and those are.
One of my favorite bands of all time is this band called Foxy Shazam.
Oh, I love
Foxy. Do you know fucking Foxy Shazam?
Eric is of the last, like, rock star personas, in my opinion.
I agree.
So there's not a lot of people of our generation that have built a rock star persona, and they're not super prevalent. Like, Eric's not super prevalent online, so you don't know what he's doing every day.
That
you don't
Macklemore video was like, blew him.
Exactly.
But I understand what you mean.
But he's not
online.
like, he's not like, I'm eating Cheerios for breakfast today and stuff like that. But like, when you do see or hear something about him, he's still within his character. And, like, he maintains that character everywhere, so he just seems larger than life, Like, I mean, he played at Crescent a while back, and he does this whole thing. He does all the shows where he eats a cigarette.
Of course, I've seen it. I saw it at Martini Ranch back in fucking way back when that was still a thing.
He does, like, these microphone stand tricks that, like, it looks like he's treating the microphone stand like it's a skateboard, and he's, like, kick flipping and stuff. Like, it's just, like, such a cool guy, and, like, but he's the rare exception, like, we're all a show and no talent. This guy can sing. Like, I've said this in so many things when people say, like, what would be the dream person to collab with?
Yeah.
Like, if we could have too far contrast, but both personas. Tom Waits is one of my favorite lyricists of all time, and he creates characters for every song. And then Eric from Foxy Shazam, like, either one of those, they're just insane, man. And like, I mean, from when they started, Foxy sounded more like Blood Brothers, and he was doing all the screams and everything, to where they ended, where they're doing more like Queen, and then now he's doing his solo project, which is
very like Michael Jackson.
Yeah. Like, it's almost like at times a little dark wavy. And actually, what is his name? I might say it wrong. I want to say it's Eric from Number 12 Looks Like You.
Okay, got
is
it.
actually helping him out with that, which is weird because Eric is very much, or like Number 12 is very much like not Eric. I'm sorry. I could be getting it wrong, but whoever the singer from Number 12, he's helping them do a lot of visuals and everything, and they're very much like mathcore,
for sure,
grindy type band, you know. So
yeah, dude, Foxy Shazam, I fell in love with them in 7th because I'm from Ohio and they're from Cincinnati.
Yeah,
and my buddy told me like, dude, I saw this show the other night, and this guy fucking hung upside down on a basketball hoop, and then fucking like army crawled out of the show, out of the venue. I was like, what the fuck? And he showed me No Don't Shoot, and my whole life was over. Like that was it. Like No Don't Shoot. At first, I was like.
That's one of my favorite songs by him, too.
I think I was listening to it almost ironically because this is the most fucking ridiculous thing ever. And then eventually I was like, no, this is really, really fantastic. And then that was the only album that was out was Introducing at that time.
Yep.
So I was in 7th grade. Yeah, so that was like 2007-ish. And so that was out. And I was obsessed with it. And then fucking they did the self-titled album with John Feldman, and then they did fucking Welcome to Church of Rock and Roll with the guy from with Justin from The Darkness. And
I didn't know that was makes sense.
Yeah, which is it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I've seen them 3 times, and after seeing Foxy Shazam, it sets the bar so high where you're just like, okay, I can never play a show and like be bored or be boring. Like I've seen this, I know that this exists. I can no longer and Alex Noth, their trumpeter, used to be in a band in Ohio that I played with in like 2008.
Oh wow,
and
that's
that
awesome.
Dude there's few people on this earth, especially people in bands, who are truly like human angels. Like they're just the sweetest people in the world. And he's one of them. And I was talking to him and I was like, oh my God, you're never going to fucking remember this. But like I was in a band in 2009 and you guys play with us. And he's like, dude, I totally remember that show. That was with yada, yada, yada. And I was like, what?
That's
awesome. Blew my head apart.
Yeah. That's the Every Time I Die experience, you know? Like you don't expect them to be that humble. Yeah. So when it happens, like they can be just a little bit more than any experience you've had before that. And it blows you away. And like you'll tell that story and it just becomes larger than life, you know?
Every single member of that band is like that. They're all the sweetest humans in the world. So,
that's so cool. And yeah, like I said, that guy is not only putting on the best live show out there, but he sings his ass off.
So crazy.
And he's got insane range.
So this is another thing that I was reading. I wanted to get kind of like, what is your relationship if there is one anymore with Victory Records? Because I've read that around. And I was like, what is that? What's going on there?
Yeah, so when we put out Still Life, which was, so we kind of, like I said, we did some compilations as we started that were just like one-offs here and there, just putting out a song and 2 at a time. We put out like this 3 or 4 song, might have been 3 in a intro. Like
3
yeah. So we put out this literally like a burn album that we folded envelopes. And I remember Cody was very much kind of spearheaded a lot of the foundation of the band.
Okay.
And his idea was we're gonna make 500 self-made albums where all the lyrics are handwritten, all the sleeves are folded, like hand folded.
Okay.
We have stencils. We're gonna spray paint each individually. So we made 500 of these,
and
we spent like days just sitting Indian style on Cody's floor making these records.
That's how bonds are made.
Yep.
That's how love is made.
And after we did that, around that time, this label called We Are Triumphant, which is based out of Boston, and they're a distributed label of Victory. They reached out to us and they asked about what we were doing. We were talking about how we had already started recording Still Life, which was the first, I guess, official studio album. And they wanted to put out the album. And they said, okay, with this, Victory Records is going to be distributing it. So Victory does Sony Red, which does all their distribution. So it gets it in places like Kmart's and Walmart's and all the online distribution places too. So that's kind of how that started. We thought it was too good to be true because we had a couple other labels or people that said they're from labels reach out to us, and they all ended up being scams. Either it was like people saying they're from a label and they really weren't. Someone that would just like start emailing us about something and somehow fall off the face of the earth, or they'd give us some offer that was just ridiculous, you know, like it was basically us paying them to be on the label. So when we got this offer, Brennan, one of our guitarists at the time, he had a friend that was a lawyer, looked it over, actually revised a lot of it, sent it back to them. It allowed us to do one release without any options, meaning we didn't have to say that we were going to do 2 or 3 albums with them. It was just one release, and we would discuss what the second release would be.
That's really, really cool.
So it was basically like a win-win for us, right?
That's fantastic. Yeah.
So we did it, and And very quickly we found out at that time through this particular subset or sub-label of Victory, they were just signing bands almost every 2 weeks, right? And every time they signed a band, like they would put up this big old like, I guess this big old like display for like 2 weeks, like, oh, we've got this great new band. And then as soon as the buzz died down from that band, they'd do another band and another band and another band. And really, when we started talking about touring and putting out new music, they weren't helping us do any of that stuff. That's what we really needed as a new band. We needed them to give us tour support. We needed them to help us understand like who should produce this album, or how should we approach press. They didn't do anything for us. They actually started asking us to help some of their other bands do that. So not only am I booking our bands on tours, but I'm helping book their bands on tours and helping their bands get press release within my capability. So for us, it was really like to be on a label, especially a label that's taking a percentage of our sales and exclusive merch designs too. It only made sense if they were expanding our network and getting us to new people that we wouldn't have got to otherwise. But we were almost doing that for the label instead of them doing it for us. And it also started hurting us over time too. So it started getting to the point where, if anything, the only thing it helped us with is we'd say, hey, we're on We Are Triumphant. It's associated with Victory Records. And some people might be willing to give us a chance or take a chance on us because, they have that kind of moniker behind it. Yeah. But then the adverse started happening where they started saying, we don't want to associate with any bands that are associated with Victory because of the bad reputation it started to get.
I was about to say, like, they're
yeah, so it hurt us.
Everything that you just said was shit that I've read years past about Victory.
So it really just, it wasn't helping us from the beginning, and then it started hurting us. And then we started seeing them, taking down bands' social media without telling them, like deleting their websites, deleting their social presence, and doing all kinds of shady things like that. And none of that crazy stuff happened to us, but we said, hey, we've got to get out before that does happen. We're not gaining anything from this. Let's get out while we can. And we were so relatively new and small at the time that no one put up a fight to keep us there, which was good because there's a lot of bands from both We Are Triumphant and Victory that gone on to try to get off the label, and they had a hell of a time doing so, and had to take more of a legal approach to it.
What the is Victory Records run by like a bunch of like shitty trust fund babies? Like what the fuck? I don't understand. Like, cause that's the thing. It's like I've never heard anybody being like Victory Records is fantastic. Yeah. Like you go on their website and there's more words written about controversies and lawsuits than there is about what they actually do or their history. Yeah. It's just fucking Hawthorne Heights or A Day to Remember or Streetlight Manifesto. Like every single one of them is just like shit.
Shane has a podcast from Silverstein and he talks about it quite a bit.
Yeah, man.
So it's just one of those things that I think
Silverstein record was great back in the day.
Yeah, fuck right. It was. Discovered in the Waterfront, or
Discovered in the Waterfront.
Broken Easily Fixed. Yeah, both were pretty good. And they're actually new one. I listened to it not too long ago on Spotify, and it wasn't bad for what it was.
It really isn't. It holds water a little bit better than like Silence in Black and White does.
Yeah. So I think a lot of labels, especially labels that have been around for a while, changed this method where like we're not making album sales, so we have to do these 360 deals, meaning they're not only taking a percentage of what you sell on your album, but they're also taking a percentage of your merch or taking a percentage of your guarantees on the road, and it leaves a band with no room to grow and no room to reinvest into the band, to the point where they're almost just touring so they can pay back the label.
Yeah, fucking Bayside. I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. Bayside. I remember them saying that like they're like fucking almost every one of their records up until Killing Time, I think that's what it was called, was like all just written in the back of like vans and buses, and they never got to invest the time into those albums that they wanted to. Yeah, because Victory just kept them on the fucking road. Like,
yeah, and that's the thing is, when it becomes that, it's like, why do you even need a label? Especially when the labels start dealing in like quantity. Like I said, like the reason why we originally took it was because there were some really great releases on Victory back in the days. There are some bands that I always looked up to, like in the late '90s, early 2000s, that were signed to Victory that made me say, wow, this is like the dream. Yeah. But I quickly found out that, a decade plus later, it just didn't make sense anymore. And we've had, even to this day, a couple labels that have reached out to us of that size that we had to say no to. We're not itching to jump back into that same thing. Totally. Where literally all you're telling me as a label is that you can give me credibility because I'm on your label. I can do everything that you can do myself at this point.
Absolutely.
I can go on CD Baby and get on Spotify and iTunes and
Yeah, fucking, you need like a subscription to DistroKid. And like,
yeah, exactly. DistroKid or any of those. You can get on there. You can learn how to do press release. And it does take time and it takes work, but at least you know what you get out of that work is because of the work that you put into it. And there's like the satisfaction in that. And that's why I think like a lot of bands and people in general need that. Like I think if you don't have a lot of small steps in a larger process, you always feel like you haven't really achieved anything. Like if your two thoughts are like, I'm going to start a band, XXX, profit, or or be famous, or whatever the long-term goal is, and you've got no goals in between because you're expecting someone else to do it for you, you're going to feel very unfulfilled, and you're probably going to break up before anything significant happens. But like for me, it's like every day if like someone says, hey, you want to be on this podcast? We're doing a review on your album. Do you want to do this interview? We're putting your album in this store. Those all feel like very small wins. And it drives me to keep going forward,
Exactly. As opposed to having to forward all that information to whatever agent you're working with and
hope
make
something
the decision
happens
for you. Or
yeah.
like, well, they're not going to do this and this and that. But like, I think one of the biggest differences between, like, I guess, emotional differences between being on a label versus doing it yourself is you get a sense of accomplishment as opposed to a sense of a feeling of like violation. Like
yeah.
you don't feel like everything's being taken from you. Instead, you're receiving all of these things. And obviously, it's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of like sending emails to people who never send you emails back. But it's so much better. Plus, it just like, let's be honest, man. Like, you as a musician, like you or any kind of artist for that matter, you need to have a thick skin and you need to have a work ethic. Otherwise, it's not going to work anyway.
So yeah, it probably builds you up for
exactly.
that.
Like if you get immediately picked up by some label and you have like, I mean, there's a few bands who've made that work, but you get picked up by a label and then you get thrown into these crazy tours. You're not going to be able to handle it if you have no idea of any kind of real work experience with that. Like,
it's really easy to feel entitled very quickly if that happens, because if you go from step 1 to 100 and then you feel like that's the way it is, if it doesn't keep progressing at that trajectory, you're going to feel like the small steps that are big wins for other people are nothing for you because you went from here to here so quickly, you know? Exactly. So I think you really need those small steps in between. And like I said, I try to draw a lot of patterns in my life and a lot of like connecting the dots. And I think that's not only for music, that's like for life, man. That's like if you're in a job where you're like your goal is to be your boss's boss's boss, and you're not looking at all the steps in between, there's going to be years before you get there, and you're probably not even going to stick it out until you get there.
Yeah,
you've got to have those small little things like, well, at least I did this today, and I'm constantly progressing towards this goal. That way you feel like you're on the right path.
Now, in a slight contrast to that, I will say there is something to be said about like, there are bands who do get like the golden hand that just throws them right into like crazy management and they go on tour or whatever.
Hey, I'll take that if you're offering.
Well, the thing is,
discount everything I just said. Let's do it. Let me sign up.
Like there's a couple like still like smaller size bands or even local bands who I'll talk to people about, and they're all and everyone's your immediate go-to feeling is resentment. Like, fuck this band, they didn't do anything to gain this. Like, their parents bought them a nice manager and whatever. But here's the thing: if that band who received all these crazy things without truly really working or bleeding for it, like most of us have, if they're still able to stick it out for 3-month tours like twice a year, and they're still the same 4 or 5 piece band, I gotta give it to them, because touring is not easy. Even if you are in like a bus and your ass is pampered every single night, 3 months of that is not fucking easy. So even if you are spoiled and whatever, there is something to be said, I think, about being able to properly handle that. Because it's fucking hard.
And really, people only see like the tip of the iceberg, like what's above the water, right? So a lot of times when you see that, you don't see the work that they put into it to actually do that.
That's also true, yeah.
And granted, there are other exceptions, like you said, where the parents have paid for everything and everything lines up. But also, a lot of these people are a lot smarter than you think they are, in a sense that there's two different approaches. There's the approach that like American Standards took, which is the approach of just grinding and grinding and grinding, and there's a lot of stress and frustration that comes in that, but you're constantly making slow progress, right? But there's the other side of that, and it's equally as smart, where you don't put out everything as soon as it's ready. You don't play every show that you get offered. You think about it really strategically, and you say, instead of writing 8 songs, releasing 8 songs, and then playing 100 shows, it's okay. I'm going to write 50 songs and only release 8 of the best songs.
That's the
and
hardest
I'm
thing
gonna
in the world.
really wait till the right offer comes and only play the right show. And when you do that, it takes longer and takes more strategy and thought behind it, but sometimes it's more impactful. And they're just 2 different approaches, right? Like, and they're for 2 different people. Because I can definitely think of people in not only like overall, but even in our scene in Arizona that have done that and been very effective at that. And you can understand why that would work, like why a label would want to pick up a band that has really like manicured their whole package, right? Like, as opposed to like, all right, this band has some really cringy videos out there, which we may or may not. Some really cringy pictures out there. They've played some questionable shows. They've done this and that, and now we have to try to mold them, as opposed to like they've done everything behind the scenes. And when they put it out there day one, their live show was perfect.
Yeah.
Their recordings were perfect. Their like pictures were perfect. Like everything just lined up. I mean, we obviously didn't take that approach. We obviously did not take that approach. But there are people that do that, and it's equally as effective. Depending on what you're going for. I mean, in hardcore, maybe it doesn't happen as often.
Yeah,
right?
for sure. That's I don't. One of the things I love Phoenix, but I mean, I think honestly, it's not Phoenix. I feel like it's probably like this with any scene, especially a scene as big as Phoenix is. You fall into what like these little echo chambers of whatever your particular genre is.
Oh yeah.
Like, I'm in the indie scene, and I know fucking all of the bands in the indie. I know. I may not know them personally, but I know who they all are. Like,
yeah, you know the players are.
Yeah, I see. Every flyer for Trunk Spacer, 51 West is an indie show. Like, I know who all those bands are already.
That's that Facebook algorithm.
Yeah, exactly.
It knows who your friends are, what you go to, all that stuff.
So, but what sucks is like, I can name like 3 hardcore bands. I can name like, I don't know, like as far as metal goes, like Gate Creeper and Take Over and Destroy. That's it. Like,
fair enough. Gate Creeper is one of the top of the top here.
Yeah,
too.
exactly. But that's the only reason I know about them is because they're fucking one of the top of the top. Like, I don't know any of the middle players or any of the like lower like underground guys either. And that really pisses me off because like I hear like I want to find more hardcore. I know like some stuff. I don't know if I guess Lifelink is considered hardcore, right? Like I know them and I know of them.
Yeah, Luke and the guys are good guys. Mike actually, that drums for them now.
Okay.
Drummed for us for a couple of years.
That's cool. Yeah, Luke. I haven't met Luke. Luke's coming on this podcast this month.
Oh,
so
cool.
I'm excited to talk to him.
I was actually talking to him earlier today,
Really?
so we may be working on something here pretty soon.
Fantastic. Yeah, I haven't met him yet. I'm looking forward to it. So now he fucking can't bail. I said it.
No, you're watching, Luke.
I fucking said it.
Messaging you like a couple hours ago.
Yeah, he seems cool. Well, hopefully it's gonna be great. But that's the thing is I want to know more metal bands. And fucking metal and hardcore also doesn't get the press that like rock and indie, even like indie rock and like pop rock does.
I mean, it also like it depends, like because I think like I
think right. I just don't see it.
Yeah, no, I think you've got a really really good point, and like to take it out of the music world real quick, and then we'll jump back in it. Like I think about like I used to skateboard a lot. I used to be one of the guys that go to the skate park like every single day for years. And then
fall down a skateboarding rabbit hole, because me too.
The second I got out of skateboarding, like I was just like, wow, people still skateboard? Like, and then I was also, and this is maybe even more nerdy. I was very much into professional wrestling, like into junior high and high school. And then the second I got out of it, like I like for a decade, I have this decade black hole of where like I didn't watch anything like that. And then now it sounds like people are starting to talk about it again. And it's like, no, there were still thousands of people going to these events every single night. But yeah, this might be true. But the second you get out of it, it's easy to say like, no one is doing this or nothing is getting out there because like it's like, I mean, in a sense, online kind of mimics real life. It just maybe more in a more precise way online. But like the people you surround yourself with are normally into the same interests as you. And when you're surrounding yourself with people that are into professional wrestling, they're going to talk about professional wrestling. When you're surrounding yourself with people that go to skate park, they're going to talk about like all that culture, you know? So the same thing with music. Like I follow hundreds of music blogs and groups on Facebook and everything else. So I see that quite a bit for metal, but I also try to follow other groups because I mean, another thing that's I think different about American Standards than a lot of other bands, whether the people that we work with like it or not, which I hope they do. But we try not to say like, hey, we're only going to work with people that work with metal bands.
Yeah.
Like we'll like play shows with indie bands or pop punk bands. Like we'll like reach out to magazines that only primarily do like one style of music and say like we're looking to bridge that audience, because the bands that made an impact for me are bands that got me into the next style, you know.
Definitely.
Like when I look at like when we said System of a Down earlier, like System of a Down, I still go back to their first few albums. I say, wow, this is actually, I still like this.
Fucking, I still look at their like last few albums and I'm
Yeah.
still like, God damn, this is so good.
I know maybe like I shouldn't like it for
I
some
know, me
reason,
too.
but like I still do like it, and it did bridge like that into something else for me. Like it helped me
Totally.
discover a whole different world, you know.
Fucking
So-
dude, I hate, like I don't like bringing it up necessarily, but let's be honest here. For kids who were growing up like really like young in the 90s, you heard Blink-182 before you heard Black Flag and Dead Kennedys.
Oh, yeah,
That's just what
absolutely.
happened. Like you were into Blink-182 and like I was into Sum 41.
Or Sum 41,
Point Pursuit,
yeah.
and all that I was so into pop punk. And
I can't tell you how many shows we play on tour where someone does a Sum 41 cover. It happens like every other show
Yeah.
because it was so instrumental for people of that time.
Yeah,
and I
then
think
you
that's
find out like, oh, you watch one of their interviews, and then they say, oh, we're into the Descendants, we're into
Yeah,
fucking
yeah.
All, we're into all, you know, any fucking punk band, and that's how I'm like, oh, Descendants, and I find
Yeah.
the Descendants like, oh fuck, this is awesome, like
it's like the whole mentality of like when you'd get a CD back in the day and look through the booklet and see what bands they thought
Yeah.
thanked, and then look up those bands, or like
Totally.
find a comp from the record store and look up all the bands on the comp, you know. So yeah, I guess I say all that to say is like for American Standards, like we want to be the band that gets people into something that's maybe heavier than us or maybe more technical than us. Like, and we want to bridge different crowds, whether it be working with different blogs and websites and things like that, or playing different types of shows. Because if we only play, like when we play with Norma Jean probably more than any band that we've ever played with, right?
that's so fucking
We-
that's crazy.
We've done probably 7 or 8 shows with them. We've done like their 10-year tour that they did a couple years ago, and we play with them a lot. But the thing is, when we play that show, the crowd that comes to see that show has seen a band that sounds around what we sound like. We're definitely not Norma Jean. We're not on that level at all. But like they've heard something that sounds like us. But if we play a show with a band that's covering Sum 41, maybe those people haven't heard something like us before, and they're like, these guys are crazy.
Yeah.
I want to go see what other bands sound like them.
Totally.
Oh, Dillinger Escape Plan or The Chariot or Every Time I Die. Wow, there's a lot of cool stuff doing this.
They're in
Like,
good company. Shit.
yeah, so it's the same thing that's like when we play like that with the Every Time I Die show. It's like people have kind of seen our sound, you know. So like we have to bridge out to be relevant. And I think what a lot of bands do, especially local bands, is they get really big really quick playing in their small niche scene. Like you're this beat down hardcore band and you play with beat down hardcore bands, and yeah, there's going to be 40 people at every show that are going nuts, but it's the same 40 people. Or like you're an indie band and you're playing Trunk Space, and Trunk Space, I mean, off topic, but Trunk Space is one of the very first places I ever played when I was younger.
Same. Yeah.
So
One of the first venues I
JRC
played.
and Steph, I mean, I love them to death, you
the
know.
best.
They were so good to us over the years, and this is, you know, when they're back on Grand and everything, and
Yeah,
I still
I'm
go to
so
the new one
lucky
too.
My band started in 2015, and I'm really lucky to have played on the Grand. We played the Grand location like 3 times.
Nice.
And I'm so happy that because I meet bands,
Yeah.
who are like, oh no, we weren't around for the Grand, and I'm like, no way.
And that's
so
like the
crazy.
Trunk Space was a community. It's
Yeah.
like it was a place that you went and found other bands, and everybody discovered stuff together. And like you would go to shows just to see familiar faces, even if you didn't know the bands. Or you'd go to like their board game night or their
Yeah.
pajama party, or you'd go carve pumpkins with them. Like they used to. There's this place called Paper Heart that was a few blocks from the Trunk Space.
Oh.
The building's still there. It's the biggest building on that strip. It's right on the corner. It's the only one that has really good parking lot, but there's nothing going on there anymore. It's
Okay.
been closed for
Got
years. But they used to have a little coffee stand before they had Trunk Space in the Paper Heart, and they used to promote
have heard about
shows.
that. Okay, I read that on the Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Apparently I only do things on Wikipedia.
Very cool.
So yeah, I saw
Hopefully it
that.
was cited, had a good source. Because it's right. And yeah, so like they used to help us do those shows, but like I say that all to say that like that community is so close knit, but if we have a bunch of small close knit communities and none of them try to tap into each other, it's never going to get bigger than what it already is
Yeah.
because there's going to be people that grow out of it, and there's going to be new people that find it, but it's going to stay relatively the same size. So for us, we're constantly pushing ourselves to play different shows and get out to different people, and sometimes it's hard because sometimes bands don't want to do that. Like I feel like weird. Like I feel like sometimes we'll message a band on Facebook and say we're setting up this show, and like, hey, we want this indie band on this show, or we want this pop punk band on this show, and like they read it and don't respond. for whatever reason, maybe they just think we're horrible or something. Or they're like, yeah, this isn't typically the type of show we play. It's like, well, why not? You know, like, don't make it every show, but why not do it occasionally? You know, because there's definitely, some of my favorite bands in Arizona right now that are killing it. Like, I listen to Sundressed. I love, like, Sundressed is killing it right now, you know? Courtney Marie Andrews is fantastic. Andrew Jackson Jihad.
Of course.
But then also, like you said, like Gate Creeper and Moonvac and then Lifelink. There's so many Way Under, Genesis Company.
Yeah,
there's so many bands out there that are killing it of all different styles. And like, I mean, I'm constantly thinking like, how can we get these people to come play shows with us? And how can we, you know, bridge those audiences?
Yeah, that's the thing is we were in, when we first started, we were very much like, we kind of established ourselves into the whole like beach goth thing, which was like way less on purpose than it seemed. Like we weren't super. I wasn't in any of those bands, into any of those bands, but like we were into like surf music and we were into punk music, and we kind of put those together, knowing that like Fiddler was a thing, and we kind of listened to them a little bit, and that definitely played a role. But it very quickly we were surrounded in this like beach goth thing, and it was very much like
drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, and it was cool, but like we tried not to play with as many of those bands as possible for that reason. Like we're like, no, I like this band's really fucking cool, and this band's really cool, and I just want to play with all of them.
Yeah, you play the same 4 or 5 bands, and the same people see you, and it feels good.
We've done that,
but you just don't.
Too.
Yeah.
Whereas like you, like I love these bands, like fucking I love. Like there was like 3 or 4 bands there for a while where we played with every single show. We were always playing with like Cheap Hotels and Sunland and 0 Degrees North, who are still one of the fucking best bands in Phoenix. And there's a bunch of bands who I love and I think they're fantastic, but we played with them so much and we always put them on the same bills where it's like we just kind of end up playing to the same people. So
and also those people will get tired of seeing that show, right? It's like, I think a lot about like when we tour, we try to play a lot of small cities that are maybe 45 minutes or an hour out of the big city, because the big city people will travel to it.
Fuck yes.
But the small city people appreciate it because they don't get it as often.
Absolutely.
And when you see a small city show, they'll have one local and 3 or 4 touring bands, and people all come out because they want to see something new and fresh, you know? If they only had the 2 or 3 locals play over and over again, people are going to say, I'm going to stop going to this show. I've already seen them play their set. Like you said, when you first started off, you play that same set for a couple of years. Like, you could only see that and have that experience so many times. Like, you want to create a different, unique experience.
Yeah, when we played in Colorado, so we're friends with this band called Victim Culture, who used to be a pop punk band called Head Injuries. Or some of them were, and when we were up there, so they're in Fort Collins, and when we played a show up in Fort Collins, they told us that they always go up to fuck my geography, Wyoming, I think is right above them. Fuck,
someone's gonna fact check.
I'm pretty sure it's Wyoming.
Put that on a wiki if it's wrong. Dude doesn't know his geography.
Fuck. But like they go to Wyoming right above them to like a really small town that's kind of on the border, or a relatively small town right on the border of Colorado and Wyoming, and they said they fucking clean house.
Yeah.
Because the kids there aren't super used to singing. That's why we got offered a house show in Payson once. It didn't end up working out, but dude, we got a fucking Payson, played with a bunch of kids who don't usually, imagine like the pissed off youth circle in Payson. Like, they want to go see some fucking crazy house show. Like, hell yeah. That's what, like.
And they're going to remember it because that's an event. Like, that's an experience. Like, the one show this month we all went out to, like, all my friends were there and we had this great time, you know? And that's different. Like, when we play, we play back home and, like, we try to space it out to once every month or every couple of months,
that's
you know?
That's what we're doing this year. We're just doing 1 month.
And when we do that, still, like, we've been playing for now going on 7 years, you know, 6 or 7 years. So it's still hard to get people to keep coming. Obviously, there's new people coming in and people going out, but it's hard to continually grow here. But we go somewhere, even if we don't go that far, like you said, we go to like a Prescott or a Flagstaff or a Tucson, people that only see us once every 3 or 6 months, those people will just really, really enjoy it. And some people will go out for a trip too. They'll say like, okay, I'm from Phoenix, but I'm going to drive 2 hours up north to go see this Flagstaff show because I'll catch the show and then I'll also, you know, go up to the snow or go check out this, you know?
Yeah.
So it becomes more an event. Like, if you can make your show an event that people remember, I think that's way more special than just saying like, okay, I went and saw 5 bands play. They all sounded relatively the same style. they all sounded like their album, you know?
Dude, see, now I want to start like a small town tour. Let's just play every town that no one's ever heard of.
We'll do the mixed genre small town show, you know?
Let's go to fucking like Minot, North Dakota or whatever. Some crazy bunch of towns where all the kids don't get to see cool stuff and then just blow them all away.
There
All
you
right,
go.
I'm going to go get beer.
Yeah, I'm down for that too.
I will be right back.
You gonna bring it in here or should I
Yeah, I'm
grab
going to
it?
bring it in there.
Sweet.
I'm going to make sure we're still running. Cool. We are still...
This is fun, man. This is
Thanks,
cool.
man.
Like too often, I'll do a lot of these podcasts and stuff, and people are just like, "How'd you get the band name?" And they're like, "Fine" and everything.
Yeah.
But it's just like I can only answer that in so many ways, and I get bored of it, you know.
I'll be right back.
Not sure if I'm on live right now. This is where we gotta do like weird stuff in the room while he's not here. Just like rub my ass all over stuff.
I know it doesn't have batteries.
Bummer.
Is that a fucking?
I was
the
gonna
worst?
jam, dude. I was gonna jam.
I know. I'm sorry.
Fine. No,
Here
you're
you go. I'll throw that bad boy away.
Sweet. Thanks.
Dude, thank you. Man. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
no problem.
I
I was gonna like buy a classy bottle of wine and put it in like a ribbon or something. Cheers.
Oh yeah, of course. Cheers. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. All right, so we're back, and then later on I'll edit the little pause or whatever. Who gives a
Cool.
shit?
Party.
All right, so I want to do that now because I'm about to jump into a whole other topic that I'm sure we'll fall into.
First off, I feel like I don't know that we addressed this on air, but for anybody watching on live, I'm wearing the suit because I thought this was going to be audio strictly, and I didn't. I thought it would be funny to dress up for a podcast in which you didn't see what I look like. Now it looks like I dressed up for a podcast,
That's fucking
which
hilarious.
is just weird.
That's fine. You dressed up for me.
Yeah, there you
I
go.
dressed up for you. You know, that happens. And I dressed up for
appreciate that.
everybody else here. So I gotta know, man. Let's start off right now. Like first. All right, so put your most recent album pants on, 'cause that's what we're talking about now.
Okay.
And more specifically, I love Silver Lake. And
Yep.
when I found out that you guys recorded there, like, I gotta know about it because Echo Park and Silver Lake, I fucking love that area, man.
Really?
What was it like to? It's my favorite pocket of LA. Like, what was it like recording over there?
It was cool, man. Like it's the first time that we recorded a full album out of state, and there's so many cool things about doing that. I mean, the first I think being that when you're in a different state and you don't have, all your friends there and places to go back to after recording, like it forces you to stay together and kind of bond. It's kind of like tour in a sense.
Definitely.
Like you're forced into this van and, you kind of build experiences together. But like when you record back home, it's like, all right, we're at the studio for 4 hours or 6 hours. We all go back home and do our own thing. Here, it's like every second we were thinking like, okay, I've got an idea. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. So it was really cool in that regard. We went to a studio that was really nice. Actually, the person that helped us with Hungry Hands, our EP before this one, recommended it. His name is Andy Marshall. The studio is called King Size Sound Labs. Their most recent notable album, at least in our style, was Let Live. But they've also done like Bad Religion. They did Mars Volta. They did Andrew WK, which was a big selling point.
We got a party.
Exactly. He's got a new album coming out, so plug in that. This podcast is sponsored by Andrew WK.
Awesome. Yeah. Dude, when I heard I Get Wet, I was like, the fuck is this?
Yeah, so great, man. Our bassist is kind of obsessed with him, and I'm to an extent too. Well, I mean, I went and saw Andrew WK at the Marquee. It's one of the most fun shows I've ever been to.
Bet.
And we actually, with American Standards Twitter, used to tweet him back and forth pretty often, and he's like really good at responding to stuff. So I remember like one time where just as a joke, we're like, we put Andrew WK on our guest list for every show with the, odd chance that he'll actually show up. And then he said something back like to the extent of like, I'm always there in party spirit, because every tweet he has says party in it somewhere,
Dude, that's knowing your like to not to bring it to cold heartless business, but like that's knowing your fucking brand.
Oh, yeah.
Like that is so smart. But like you know who else? Not to get off topic, but I mean,
Yeah.
fuck, that's what this podcast is all about.
There you go.
He was really, really good at responding to emails. At Henry Rollins.
Really?
I've talked to Henry Rollins on email like 3 or 4 times.
You know,
he
actually,
just responds
I
immediately.
have heard that before. Cody, our guitarist, and he's since passed.
He's my hero. Oh yeah,
Yeah. So when he
Sorry about
passed, no, Cody can be here too.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
So
The party spirit.
when Cody passed, I think people were tweeting Henry Rollins and like sending a message because Cody was a very big fan, and yeah, I believe he responded because I remember people were circulating that around too.
Yeah, dude, he gets back to you immediately. It's almost like I mean I'm sure it is. Like he is one of my like top 5 most important people. Really shaped the way that I think. I think the top two people, not in my own personal life, who shaped the way that I think are Henry Rollins and George Carlin.
Nice.
And I love them so much. And Henry,
Gonna go on a 7 bad words rant here.
dude, shit, piss, fuck, cocksucker, motherfucker.
There
like,
you go.
Shit, fart, turd, and twat. Even later on, I love them both for so many reasons. But one of the things I love about Henry and what I learned from him, for some reason that I couldn't learn from my own family growing up, was work ethic.
Yeah.
Like my parents had a lot of work ethic. I don't know why. For some reason, I didn't really like want it from them. But when I saw Henry do it, I was like, it's cool to work.
Yeah.
Like,
All right. That's all you need.
And
You need someone cool. You don't need some old ass parents.
Yeah. So like I'm sure a part of his work schedule is like reading emails.
Yeah, he probably has like 2 hours a day.
Yeah,
like, so
fucking. He's on the treadmill responding to emails.
he probably
like,
has it like written down too.
yeah, that's crazy. So yeah, anyway, it's really cool when people are responsive like that. So
Yeah.
Andrew WK, they put out. They're putting out
So
the
they put out some great albums, and the guy that helped us mix the last EP before this one had recommended it. So we went there, and it was a beautiful place, like multiple rooms. They had one room that was just full of drum sets, one room that was full of like pianos and synthesizers and like just everything you could possibly want. They had runners, so like when we rented it, it was rented for the week, and they had people that was like, and I felt weird about this, like, hey, we want a coffee, and they're gonna go get the coffee. So like I got to the point where we're like, no, I'm not gonna do that. Do you want the coffee? I'll go grab a coffee. I'm not even recording vocals right now, man.
Yeah.
You chill back, even though we're paying for this, because I just feel weird about that, you know.
Yeah.
So it was really cool in that regard, but also, I mean, the thing about it is like I feel like we really I don't want to say we botched the album, but like, so during the recording, we did find out about Cody passing, and Cody had been out of the band for a while at that time, but it definitely hit us hard and hit me hard too, because Cody was so like formative for what American Standards was, you know, even after him leaving, and then literally weeks later, I found out that my father had cancer, and my dad was just this really old school like, just kind of like those like. I don't know, just like those old stereotypical dads you see on like some old sitcom or something, right?
Uh-huh.
And just like really tough and didn't speak to anybody and didn't like just kept to himself, you know. So like when he called me and told me about it, it was already too late, you know. It was already in its last stages. He had me take him to the hospital and he passed a couple weeks later. So there was this time where we came back to Arizona, and I kind of stopped thinking about the album altogether. And I had to kind of work on all that, which is, I don't know if you ever had anybody in your family or anything pass, but it's so much like, not only the emotion, but also there's just like this shitty, sterile, like paperwork about it, right? You know, like, so like after my dad passed, and like I try to, like, it's kind of like maybe my flaw, but I try to find humor in a lot of stuff.
No, that's not flaw. That's a brilliant coping mechanism. I'm exactly the same way.
Yeah. So like when my dad passed, I had to like call these places, like I had to call his bank and be like, hey, you know, if my dad passed, you've got to close his accounts. And I had the trouble getting his death certificate. There's a long story behind that. And they're like, well, we need a death certificate or we won't close the accounts. And his light, like the electricity said the same in the water. I'm like, well, shit, dude, like, I guess keep his lights on. He's not paying for it. So do whatever you have to do. But like, I'm trying to do the right thing here.
Yeah.
So it was just weeks, which turned into months of kind of dealing with that type of stuff. And then we started thinking about the album again, and we had been working on this for almost 2 years at this point.
So you weren't recording it when you found out. You were just working on it.
Yeah,
right?
we're just working on it. Yeah. So we started thinking about the album again, and I started thinking like I had so much stuff because I'm the kind of guy when it comes to like writing, like lyrics and everything. Like I'm constantly writing. I've got a notepad on my phone, and I'm bringing it up daily. You know.
Constantly. Yeah, sure.
And then kind of forming it once we have the music actually recorded. so like I started thinking like this just doesn't seem relevant to what I want to do anymore, you know? Like I did still want to, because granted this is like pre-election, but also when we're like, all right, we're going towards apocalypse here. So I wanted to in my spirit, I wanted to write something not political in the sense that like I don't write like for example, like I'm not so punk rock that I'm writing like anti-Trump songs and stuff, right? But I do write songs more about the personal aspect of this. Just like the idea that like the way that our society is right now, like whether it be politics or religion or just like the social media algorithms, it like tears us apart. It creates these echo chambers, and we're all saying the same thing, and we're all yelling as loud as we can at each other. And I had to talk about that, but the entire album was going to kind of be about this, and that was going to be a theme. Now we've got this point where like, wow, we lost Cody and I lost my father, and like, how do we write this album and still get everything out? And I've got so much to say here, but it just doesn't make sense to me. And then that's when I started realizing, okay, like I guess at its core, it's all really about like separation and division, you know, like people are separating, and then literally like, you know, losing my father and losing Cody and everything, that's kind of a different type of separation in a sense, and coping with it. So it was really just about coping with that feeling, you know? So that's where I rewrote a lot of the lyrics, and we started, you know, kind of rearranging stuff, because I'm more of the orchestrator in the band. I like Corey, our guitarist now, gives us the parts, and I say, okay, play this 8 times and do a stop right here and come back in with this, and I kind of arrange it to make sense for what the lyrics are. So that's kind of where we changed everything and flipped it upside down and reworked it. So we did that. We had already put so much money and time into this album, and we just couldn't keep going at that I guess trajectory. We couldn't keep driving out to California, spending more money at this expensive studio and everything. Our drummer Mitch, which this is the first album he's drummed on. We've had a few drummers over the last 6-7 years.
Man.
Yeah, right, man.
Fucking
They're
drummers.
in so many bands, There's too damn needed. So he was new to this album, but he actually had worked at a studio in Memphis, and he said, you know, I'll mix this album. And so he kind of he's great at doing what he does, but he kind of had one hand behind his back, right? Because now like he had all these tracks that he didn't engineer. He didn't set up the mics. He didn't set up the placement of the tracks and what they're titled. And he had to kind of go through this big old jumble of stuff that we had recorded over the year and figure it out and try to make it work. And he really had to work with what we had, and that's kind of what became Anti-Melody. So I think I love this song so much, and they mean more to me than anything we've ever done. But I also think that like they're very raw, and they're not as produced as like other bands in our style, or even as produced as some of our other albums. But I think they mean a little bit more to me too. So it was a weird process. So it was kind of bittersweet. Like we had this great experience of recording out of town, everything that came with, but then we had all this bad stuff that happened, and it just came about like, how do we take everything that's laid out right here, pick up the pieces, and what we talked about earlier, like rather than sitting on this and try to make perfect sense for the next few years, and maybe, you know, have a 4-year gap between albums, let's put it out like this and say like, this is what we're about, and this is what we're trying to say, and hopefully people appreciate it for what it is.
Dude, it's fucking goddamn. That's what an intense little visage you fucking put us on. Jesus Christ.
It started being a downer.
Like, no.
It's back to the piss and fuck.
It's not a downer. It's really fucking intense. I can't imagine like going through all of that. And I mean, were you still close with Cody after you guys split, or was
that's the hard
part.
A
mutual thing?
Yeah, no, it was mutual. It's like the thing about like, so.
And if you could stop me if I probe too far.
No. That's the thing is like I'll definitely cope with humor, and I'll throw some jokes at you, but I will talk about anything and everything.
Cool.
When we started the band, like I said, we were like, you know, they were a few years younger, but I was 25, and it's like that point in your life where you start like having real shit to deal with, right?
Yeah.
So it's like. Yeah. It's like we had been in bands, and bands have been to Dream for a long time. And then when we started American Standards, that's when we were shifting into like, it's not the dream. This is what I need to do. This is what I need to do, like, just to cope with life. But like, I don't need to make it a job where it makes my money and I have to rely on it. And that's actually where like it started becoming fun, because like now it's like, well, like I don't need to do this. So because of that, I don't need to be on the road nonstop. I don't need to play these shows that I wouldn't even pay myself to go see. I could just have fun with American Standards, and that's really what American Standards became. But as we were having that transition from being these kids that had no cares to like being adults, like priorities changed a lot in those years. Like that stretch from like let's say 24 to 28, like your entire life is turned upside down. And so where we started saying that like this is going to be for fun, and then it started getting serious. We had the label, we had we started touring more often. We started getting these big show offers, just more than we had ever expected. We almost started getting more than we had ever expected out of music when we stopped caring about making it our thing, And that's when a lot of the guys, Cody included, and Brennan and Jeff, our first drummer, I don't know, I don't want to speak for them, but they had different priorities, right? And in a sense, I mean, maybe they felt bad because me and Corey, we were maybe had it that spark reignite, and now we had this like glimmer of hope, and we wanted to run with it, and we wanted to play all these shows now and tour nonstop, and we keep asking for it, and the guys keep having to say no, I can't, I have to be here for work, and I have this and I have that. And so I think it left amicably because they said like, hey, I'll play out whatever we have while you get new guys, and I'll help train or teach the new guys. But like, I just can't spend as much time on this as you want to. But if you need to spend that time on it, I don't want to be the one that holds you back. So it was like we split on good terms, and we still talk to Cody. And I do wish, like, especially in the last year, that we stayed closer to Cody. I think Corey stayed pretty close to Cody over the time. But me and him, like, we just had both really strong personalities, even in the band. I think what like made that first album was so good was like we were just like this the whole time recording it, Totally. Like I wanted to, when I came into American Standards, I wanted to do something more like rock and roll and punk and like step away a little bit from hardcore and metalcore, and then Cody wanted to go more to like the Chariot and Converge and Botch, and which I love. I absolutely love.
The album is fucking sick.
Yeah, it's so good. That's the album of the year to me, honestly. But like I wanted to start putting more structure to it. So that's kind of how we landed in the middle. Like we do have some of that chaos going on, but I was always fighting for structure, and Cody was always fighting for chaos, and then we always landed right there in the middle, and that's really what made that first album, And then our personalities outside of music were also very much like that. Like, if Cody had one idea and I had another idea, we would both let each other know, and we might go away for, a couple hours, and we'd come back and we'd be fine together, but it's just kind of how we worked,
What you said about not needing something or needing something struck a chord with me because recently we went on this tour that was a lot of fucking fun, and it wasn't even a tour. It was 2 shows that were weird. We did... Or I guess 3 shows. We did a show in LA and we did a show in Slab City.
Oh, you played in Slab City?
Yeah.
That's gnarly, dude. I didn't even know they did shows there.
Yeah.
Did you stop at that holy mountain on the way there?
We didn't. Well, it was dark when we got there, so we didn't. But I've been there before. I've been to Salvation Mountain before.
I'm surprised you're alive right now.
Dude, Slab City was fucking insane.
I can imagine.
It was amazing.
It's the weirdest stuff there.
There's a bar. Have you been there?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a bar
We went there for that, the Salton Sea.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And to see all the dead fish.
Totally.
So we did Salton Sea, then we did Salvation Mountain, and then we did Slab City. And
that was the library and shit. Slab City. So there's a bar there called The Range. This old dude Bill runs, and it's ran by generators. Okay. And it's exactly
inside Slab City.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's not Salton Sea. It is in like you get through. It's in the heart.
Yeah, because they do have the one bar in Salton Sea area too.
Yeah.
Which is a dive.
This is outside. This is it's outside.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Oh.
It's outside. There's a stage just set up out there. That's how it's done. And
yeah, maybe that's another mixed genre show we gotta do.
Fuck, it's insane. So we get there, and like, first of all, it's Slab City. Like, one of the craziest things about it was there's all these little kids there, which you don't think about. When you think of Slab City, you think of a bunch of like crazy off the gridders and yada yada yada. But these dudes have kids.
Yeah.
So there's like 6-7-year-old kids, Lord of the Flies, beating the fuck out of each other. It was awesome. Yeah. Part of me was like I work at a school. I should do something about this, right? Should I like break this up? Like, isn't that kind of my responsibility? And then
you pull out your badge because
like fucking there's like these 6-year-old, 7-year-old kids just straight up like when you're a kid, you roughhouse with each other and you beat each other up and you have a great time, but there's like you know that your parents are probably nearby or thinking about your parents, so there's a little bit of restraint that happens. You don't go.
There's no laws in Slab City.
Dude,
you can kill each other.
These kids are fucking ripping each other. Their shirts are all torn up by the end of the fight. They're all like torn apart. And there's like these weird like makeshift monkey bars right off the side of the stage. These kids are hanging on and kicking each other off, like King of the Mountain style.
They've got barbed wire wrapped around their shoes.
Straight up Mad Max. But when you look at them and you see through the grime and you see through the dreads in their hair, like these are like beautiful children. These are normal children. These aren't like crazy fucking like gummo 3-eyed kids. Like these are like normal looking kids.
This is what they know. Like this is their life and this is what they know.
And that was the craziest part. But there's also like 8 dogs just running around
everywhere. Yeah, we saw
people
a lot
like
of that.
Strung out and shit. It was super fun. But on that tour, getting back to what I was talking about, was like it was not fun for me. It was fun because Slap City was insane and the locations were great.
You got to circle back around to how the hell you got booked or asked to play Slap City.
Okay, I'll do it right now. Okay, so we have a friend named Bradley Palermo who's so I'm
that name sounds vaguely familiar.
He's a folk singer-songwriter out of Hollywood.
Okay.
And I'm a really big folk guy. That's like my top 3 genres, like folk. I'm talking all the way from fucking like Woody Guthrie to Yvette Brothers, like everything. And he like hit us up on Instagram. Or he followed my girlfriend on Instagram, and we just like wild hair checked him out and liked his music, fell in love with his music, and became friends with him. And which goes to show that like that serial liking everybody and following people on Instagram, that shit fucking works. Like it might be 1 in 100, but it works. Like he made a fan that we bought all of his shit. Like we're really into him, and we're friends. So we were staying a night at his apartment because we went to LA together. And we were like, hey man, like I know we don't know you, but we're going to LA for one of our favorite artists is Frank Turner. And
Frank Turner's sick.
Oh, dude, he's like, she's got tattoos. Like, we're fucking crazy into Frank Turner. And Frank was premiering his documentary out in Pomona, and we were staying in his apartment and we were like, hey, we're like, hey, we need somewhere to crash. Like, we don't fucking know you, but, like, we're going to be in town. And he offered us, like, yeah, man, come to my pad. Like, hey, let's hang out. Let's have a good time.
That's cool.
We went up to his apartment in Toluca Lake, and we fucking met him and had a great time. And while, like, drinking some Tecate and relaxing with him, he told us this story about how he played at fucking the Slabs. And we're like, dude, we've been there before. The place is crazy. And that's when he told us about, like, oh, I know the guy that sets up shows there. And I'm like, dude, I'm in a band. Let's make this happen. And then that's how we did it. We set that shit up, and we did it. It was fun.
That's super cool.
Dude, it was fucking crazy. So, anyway, during that tour, though, I was really serious into getting stoked at that time. And I was really starting to realize, like, I'm working my ass off. I'm working like 50 hours a week. I'm running a podcast. I'm in a band. I'm doing all these things. And I realized, like, going on the road, like, as amazing as this place isn't super like necessary, because it is obviously necessary, and I feel like it is now, and I have better frame of reference. But at the time of the
you're
tour,
right. You can get by without touring.
Yeah.
Now that you can put your music anywhere and promote it anywhere at any time.
And touring is fun and great, but we were all feeling weird about that one trip. And I think that there was a lot of factors in that were external, and we're totally healthy again. We just had like a little weird. Everyone, you go through static. Every band goes through some static. Unfortunately, our static had to go through this weird little trip we were on, and so we're here, and I was like, I was just like really hot on the podcasting thing, and I was like, man, I don't need to fucking like spend all this goddamn money and be hungry on the fucking road when
I'm
I can
a big
just, like,
famous podcaster.
Well, not even that I'm big and famous, but like I can just put stuff out on my own from my home.
Yeah.
Like I can do what I love from my house. Like this is awesome. Or from my apartment. So I was just really on that trip at the time. My head was really far into that. And Josh and Austin and everybody was kind of feeling weird about this. And that's when I kind of realized, like, up until that point, I was certain that I needed the band to be happy. I needed to be successful in the band to be happy. And it's funny that you mentioned 24 to 28, because I'm 24, and I was newly 24 when this happened, and I started to realize, I was like, at the time, maybe when we first started the band, I did need it, and I had no connections. I didn't know what the Phoenix music scene was other than fucking AJJ, and I had heard of Dry River Yacht Club, but like I didn't.
Dry River's pretty sick too.
I didn't know local music. I didn't know anything. So At the time, yes, I absolutely needed it. I needed it more than just wanted it. I needed to be in this band. This is where my life needs to go. I need to go on this.
It's your identity.
It's my identity. They need to go on this straight trajectory. And I did that for a while. And then I started to realize, as I started to have fun with other things, that like, I don't need it. I like it and I enjoy it. And it should never stress me out to the point of being miserable.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't need it anymore. And I was like, it took me like curling up and crying and really like losing my mind a little bit. And then I came out of it just like, wait, like I don't need it. Like, and that makes it better. Me not needing this as much as I felt like I was obligated to need it before made it so much better.
Yeah,
so much
I completely
sweeter,
agree.
So much more free. Like I can do whatever I want with it now. I can have such a good time. And it was such an emotionally like I was just breaking through this like naive cocoon that I had built around myself where I was like, I'm fucking my own person. I can do whatever the fuck I want. If I'm doing this, it's because I'm choosing to do it. And it was so much more fun. It became so much more tasty. And the show that we put out when we did our album or EP release show after that, like a couple months after playing those shows, oh, it was fucking fantastic.
It's like a big weight off your shoulders.
Oh my God. It's like I have other avenues. I don't have to be in this band and this is it. Either like this band or death. Like that finally started to subside and I was like, this is so much better. Fuck. But like, I don't know. They just
I think we made a big breakthrough here.
Yeah, we have.
Now let's go to the phone lines.
Anyway,
no, I agree.
I didn't mean to fall away like super into that, but
you know, to go back to like connecting dots and drawing patterns, I think that's a huge thing throughout life. That like when you realize that same like feeling, it's the same exact feeling with anything in your life. Like for example, like being in a relationship, the relationships that don't work are the relationships with both people and base their identity so much on the other person that the second the other person, disappoints them or doesn't meet their expectations, then they're completely like destroyed, right? And they get mad and they argue and then they find themselves arguing over these stupid things because they're basing their identity on something that they can't control.
External factors.
And a band, like I've done the same thing when I was younger and I'll do the same thing again. Like sometimes you get so caught up in it that you say I want this to happen so bad, but you can't control like one other person. You can't control 4 other people. And the second that someone can't make a practice or can't play a show or can't go on a tour or they do something that's like something that you wouldn't want to happen, it just destroys you, That's why you've got to let go and say really that this is great when it works. But when it doesn't work, I have other stuff that's great too. And that's okay, And everybody can have their own things and have multiple of their own things and find happiness in multiple places. Because if you only find happiness in one place, like that thing is going to let you down. There's no doubt about it.
Especially when you have other people that you have to count on for it. And
absolutely, because their one thing is not your one thing. Like there's no way that exactly what you want, regardless of how much it works for a little bit of time, you will grow and change as a person, and it's not going to stay the same.
Yeah, and the members, like I really truly do owe just about everything that I do now and that I'm interested in now, and the paths that I've taken in my life. Like I do owe like fucking almost everything that I don't either owe to myself or my girlfriend who like helps kind of manage. She's kind of like our faux manager. She has been for forever. I owe it all to the band. Like Phantom Party, like really fucking just like that's how I know everybody. That's how I got interested in local music. That's how this exists. It's very important. I love it. We're writing a next record. Really fucking excited about it. But like, it's just I don't know. I don't want to keep belaboring the point, but it was just it's crazy. Like it sends you things that you do send you down all these avenues, and you have to almost sometimes let go of this white knuckle grasp that you have on something to really like to kind of see the full picture. And it doesn't mean that you don't love it anymore, or you don't want to do it anymore, but it gives you a more healthy relationship. If you're in a relationship with somebody and they fucking suck or they're mean or manipulative, like
which will happen even if you're in any relationship. Will happen
you're right.
For like one interaction or for one day or for one,
That's a good point. That's a fucking good point.
Like it's okay if it happens occasionally, but like if it's all the time, that's a different story, right?
Fucking, that's a really, really, really insightful point. You don't ever hear people talking about how healthy relationships will do fucked up things just like a truly corrupt relationship will. Like, it happens because we're all corrupt. We're all people. Like, that every once in a while you're going to make a mistake or you're going to do something that's not very nice.
And you'll let a band put out a bad song and still get like into the next song and say like, well, this song is pretty good.
Yeah, it's so true. But that's the thing is like, but the hardest thing in the world though, especially for someone like me who like I'm blessed to now, like I've made a lot of mistakes in like past relationships. I'm happy to now be in a relationship where everything's cool, but I'm so.
Are you just saying that because she's in the other room? You can talk to me. It's okay.
I'm.
You can whisper.
She hurts me. No, I'll be the first to admit, like I'm extremely. I don't want to say codependent because codependent has a negative connotation beyond just needing somebody else. Like, but like, I'm very, very much like. I would never be able to be like the Henry Rollins Road Warrior single guy. Like I'm very companionship is extremely crucial to who I am.
Yeah.
And like I've been in relationships in the past that lasted fucking eons longer than they should have, just because I was sure that my life would not be able to physically go on without this person. But like give it a fucking like 3 weeks and I made some like angsty mixtapes and fucking, you know what I mean, listening to some really great music.
Through Newfound Glory.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and like you're only a couple Swans records away from getting over this person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like and getting over somebody, it takes a long time and it's a wound that maybe never heals, but once you're able to get away from that person, you're able to get away from their influence. You realize like, fuck. Like I didn't need that person at all.
Yeah,
like,
it's so easy to convince yourself that you don't need happiness when you're unhappy, right?
Yeah.
Like it's
absolutely.
so easy to say like, well, I deserve like to be unhappy because I've been unhappy for a while. But the second you have that glimmer of like, wow, there's something else there, you start to realize like, yeah, I could really be something else. But it's easy to convince yourself like, yeah, there's nothing else out there for me. It's gonna be this or nothing. You know?
And more often than not, that convincing is not a conscious one. It's something that you build up without realizing it over time. And before you know it, you're convinced that you need this person, even though you've never.
Yeah, you know, you're not in your head like bargaining with yourself. Yeah. You're just like, this is how it is, and I guess
it's come on, let's keep this happening. But it's not how it happens.
I feel like we're on Dr. Phil here. It's a really good breakthrough.
Sorry, I know, man. This is not your average. Your average local music podcast.
I'll take this any day over like, you know, how'd you get your band name?
Yeah, fucking A. But I do want to get back to that because a couple other things that I wanted to ask about. How many tracks? I do want to know this. How many tracks didn't make the cut? Were there any?
Yeah. So actually, when we recorded Anti-Melody, there's only one song that we had that we didn't put on the album, and we started to record it, and we went back to two things, like did it fit like thematically in with the rest of the songs, and did we truly have the time to spend that we needed to spend on this to make it something good, right? So we cut it, and you know what, now that I think of it, because we're back in the process of writing, almost as soon as we put Anti-Melody out, we jumped right back into writing again, because we'd spent so much time on this that it felt, like you said, it felt old already. Although we had changed some things, it just felt old. So we've already got back into writing. We haven't even got back to that other song that we kind of had part of. So yeah, no, I'm so excited for the new stuff, both on and the people that will potentially be working on with it when it comes to producers and studios, but also just the ability to do it right. Because like I said, like I love everything American Standards has done from the point of like none of it has been what I wanted it to be, but all of it has been something, you know, like all of it has been like something completely unique. It's like when, like, if we went in and something was exactly what I wanted it to be, then it's almost like not being in a band. It's like a solo project, right? Yeah, so like you're always compromising with the other guys. So with the next thing, I think that at least like we really want to put like from the way that it sounds, like the way that it's mixed, the way that it sounds and everything, we really want to make this like the one thing that's like, if we were to quit after this is like something that we can be super proud of. Because I think we've always been proud about our message. We've always been proud about the ideas and kind of the mindset for the band. But we always know that like the actual production behind it can be amped up, you know?
Yeah, for sure. That's so. I mean, That's what, and when it comes to albums too, like it has to have it has to be cohesive. Like I'm a believer in the album still. I'm not a song cherry picker unless I'm looking for new bands to listen to.
You're the last of the dying breed.
I know, man. It's
shuffle.
Fuck. So I love the album, and that's why I like vinyl. It forces you to listen to the album.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like when it comes to choosing songs, some of them are really good, but you have to like let them go because they make no sense in the track listing.
Yeah.
And that sucks, and maybe you can put it on a comp or you can make it a single on its own if it's really strong enough. Usually if it's that strong, it'll fucking be on the album, but like you have to kind of kill your darlings every once in a while, man, like in order to make it really and fucking put out a bonus thing later on. Like we did a cassette tape once that was
nice.
like
we did cassettes too.
I love cassettes.
Yeah.
We've done a few of them, but we did one that was like really long, and it was everything that we had. So we almost like we kind of, because it took so long to put that first album out, it was almost like an era. Like, okay, this is era 1, right? And these are, and so for that first era, we had all of these songs that we didn't use that don't fit like the sound, because our sound has changed a fucking lot. So it's like these songs we're never gonna play or record because they don't fit our new sound. But they're so cool, or these are like old versions of the same songs. We had a lot of this, so we put them all on a cassette tape, and we sold them all. We sold them all, I think, like our first night when we released the album.
Nice,
because they're cheap and people like,
something different.
Yeah, but
like I feel like for us, cassette tapes are always like the thing where people go to the merch booth and they're like, "Oh, it's funny they have cassette tapes. Hey, come see this." Anyways, I'll take that T-shirt.
Yeah, I know. I like cassette.
I mean, we did sell we had Hungry Hands, our last EP before Anti-Melody. We had, I think, 400 or 500 cassette tapes, and that album came out 3 years ago, and just literally like a couple months ago we finally sold the last one, because they are the thing that they always pick up, the very first thing they pick up at the merch booth, but they never buy it. And even if they do buy it, I'm like, I know you're not listening to that.
I'll say, dude, the indie scene, we got so many fucking hipsters. We
need to go to that.
We got rid of our cassettes.
Damn.
Our cassettes.
We had vinyl.
So
vinyl
fast.
went quick. Vinyl went quick, but
for vinyl.
We don't either. But like we lucked out. So although we haven't been on a major label since we did the first album, we did team with a few like independent labels that were way too nice to us. So we teamed with Enjoyment Records actually out in UK. We found ourselves like on our Bandcamp. So we push people to our Bandcamp more than anywhere, because like if you buy something on Bandcamp, that's the most money's going to the band as opposed to getting it anywhere else. So we'd push people to Bandcamp, but then like when we found out that we were shipping so much stuff to the UK, it's like, all right, you're gonna buy like, a CD for, let's say, $8, but I have to tack on an extra $8 like just to send it out to you and hope it comes in one piece. So Enjoyment Records out in the UK, they started pressing physical product for us, and they made a run of 7-inch for us, which was really, really cool because we couldn't afford a 7-inch by ourselves. And they did this deal where they didn't even own any percentage of the album. They just said, hey, we're going to press 600 of these.
It's a good number, I feel like.
Yeah, I forget exactly what number, but I want to say that they sent 200 to us for free, and said sell these at whatever you want to sell them at, and keep all the money. And then they kept the remaining, and they said we're gonna sell these on our own. So it's like they're forced to promote the album because they want to sell them. Of course. And we'll send you 20% of the sales from it.
Yeah, I've heard about deals like that.
Dude, like not only do we get 200 vinyl that we couldn't purchase on our own, but you're also going to be promoting us and giving us some from it. So it was like a win-win. And our cassettes were very similar. Nacion Libre, which is a company in Mexico, pressed our cassettes. So it's like a way that like we didn't have to pay this like crazy shipping fee to send it to people. So people got it for cheap. There's another person promoting us, and we were getting something that we probably couldn't have bought for ourselves unless we really wanted to take a risk.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. It's so cool. I know Troubled Minds did something like that too.
They were the label in California, right?
Yeah, I don't remember where they.
I forget the label too. We talked to them a bit.
Really Rad Records, maybe.
Yeah, we talked to them a bit actually for Anti-Melody.
They're amazing.
Yeah,
I fucking love Troubled Minds so much.
They see the label too seems really, really cool. The hard thing with like the independent labels is like all the stars have to align, because if like some guy in his garage is going to spend money on this random band, they want to have the money to spend, and it has to be at the right time to say like, all right, let's move on this quickly,
Yeah.
So it was a matter, especially with Anti-Melodies, like once again, we could have sat on it for a long time to get a record label to help us back a lot of it. But But we were like, this means something to us now, and we don't want to wait on it for so long. By the time we put it out, we're completely over it, you know?
Yeah, and a lot of it's hustle too. Like Matt Alderwood from Troubled Minds told us about that a long time ago, and we haven't hit them up. So it's like it's like 99.9% our fucking fault for it not ever happening.
You know, unpopular opinion. The reason why any band is not where they want to be, whether it be popular or rich or whatever metrics of success that they have for themselves, is because of that band. It's not because like what we all tell ourselves, like if I just knew the right people or had enough money or had enough this, is none of that. Like either like you don't have the sound, or if you do have the sound, because there's plenty of bands that sound better than 99% of the other bands that are making it out there, you don't have the drive.
Absolutely.
And honestly, most of it's the drive. Like there's so many bands in Arizona and anywhere else that sound so great, but like they're not pushing themselves to tour. They're not like pushing themselves to get out there. They're not contacting press or labels. They're waiting for something to happen. They're like waiting for one day to wake up and like check their email and be like, oh shit, like we're now signed to XX label, you know, like, and they're going to do everything for us. But what they're going to find out that even if that like dream label approaches them, they're not going to get the deal that they think in their mind is going to make them get to the next step. Because like the bands that get that deal are the bands that are already doing it themselves.
And on the flip side of that, there's a lot of fucking really hacky, shitty bands who are doing really well because they work their asses off. That's all you need, man. Like you need the hustle. Like the hustle shows. There's so many bands. Like
that's where we thrive. Hustle, all hustle, the bands, no talent.
But that works. Like I see bands all the time who like the reason I'm always seeing their name is because they're always doing shit.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what the most important thing is. And
I always think like, dude, like if I had talent and had this drive, where would I be?
Dude, I feel the same way.
I would probably be Taylor Swift. I would be Taylor Swift right now. But no, see, like I have to scream in a hardcore band.
I've had the same exact thought because I'm a bass player. For some reason, like songwriting for me, as much as I love folk music and I love all these things, it's I can write a song, but it's not my go-to way to express myself. I wish it was, but it's not. I would much rather just like do I'm like, for instance, I like writing. It's like writing I'm really good at. I can sit down and just listen to music all day and I can write fucking whatever. I can write and sing or podcasting or whatever. There's plenty of other things that are my go-to way of expressing myself. For some reason, songwriting, I have to like think about it. I'm gonna sit down and write a song, but it's not my thing. If it were though, I'm so convinced because of like my work ethic. I'd be fucking here.
I will say bass is like to me, bass is my instrument of choice. Like I absolutely love bass because like it's like you're never gonna be a good guitarist because there's so many good guitarists out there. But like bass players is like, all right, you played the root note of like everything, you know, like especially in our style and like heavier music. You know?
Dude, what the fuck is with that? Why do you guys keep burying the fucking bass?
No one's trying. Like, not only are they not trying to like shine in what they play, you're right. They bury it and mix so low that's like I don't even know if there's a bass there. You know? So like I feel like it's easier to be a good bassist and it's easier to be creative without shredding on bass by like really like thinking like, so like we started pre-production actually last week on kind of what we're working on for next. And like I had so much fun just sitting there and like spitballing ideas with the guys. I'm like, all right, let's do this on bass and let's do that on bass because like I'm always a guy in American Standards. You'll notice in like a large majority of our songs, there's always one section that drops down to bass and drums or has like some kind of bass fill. That's me saying 80% of this song should be bass and drums, and they compromise on, all right, we'll give you 5%.
Yeah, and with bass especially, the drums are so fucking triggered, and they sound so big that the bass isn't even as necessary.
And we only have one guitar, too, so it's like almost like...
Okay, well, that's... You guys only have one guitar?
Yeah, we only have one guitar.
Damn,
so like
that's rare.
We almost have to, especially in like heavier stuff. Yeah, so it's like we have to treat the bass guitar as like another way to have leads, you know? Yeah. So it's like, I mean, if the bass isn't there, like both holding it down and shining sometimes, it might get a little boring compared to a lot of our other people.
Watch it sometimes.
I would, if it was up to me, like I said, 80% bass and drums. The guys won't let me have it.
That's what I like about being in a three-piece, though, is that like I like because my bass playing has a lot of. It's not like I wouldn't say leads, but there's a lot of lines
Yeah.
throughout a lot of it.
That's cool.
And I like doing that. And my tone is very, very MIDI, very trebly, it cuts. So we're in a 3-piece band. It works really well because I'm not like it's as much as I love that like really sexy, funky kind of like low treble, low mid sound,
popping it out.
As much as I love that shit, it's not me. I want like I my bass is very like Chris 2 from Anti-Flag.
Nice.
Or
I was actually just listening to Shane Told, his podcast, Silverstein, that we mentioned earlier. He just had Shane Told on earlier too.
Nice. So. Yeah. So I like his tone, or even like Mike Herrera from MXPX. I like that really pretty, bright, flashy kind of tone.
We're like the really dirty, like slap a Sans amp and just distort it up to a guitar.
Dude,
the funny thing actually about our the pre-production, we got a few of the tracks back the other day that are literally just like mainly drums, and we've got like scratch guitar and some bass on there. The guy hit us up, and the first thing I told him is like, I want this bass obnoxiously loud. And it is loud. It's a loud bass guitar.
That's awesome, man.
I want to make sure people have no mistake that I want a lot of bass in this.
That's awesome. That was with our last EP, that was one of the things. We went for a much dirtier sound. Like our first album is very clean. It's very bright. It's very surfy and poppy and whatever. But like we're not doing that anymore. It's very like rough around the edges now.
Nice.
So our EP was supposed to be like, because the full length album that we're working on is going to be way different. So we kind of like built the middle
bridge
ground,
between
which
it,
is the EP. And
smart.
We like that the bass tone on it is like real. It's way dirtier. And that was so
gritty.
much fun. It's like half of it's DI, half of it's mic'd. And we just like sat in the studio with Matt.
That's cool. A lot of bands aren't miking bass now. That's cool.
Oh yeah, dude. And speaking of Troubled Minds, we went through Matt Alderwood from Troubled Minds. We've used him a bunch of times, and he made it sound so fucking sexy. Okay, really weird thing. Like, this is very odd. This is going to be an odd question. Very kind of unorthodox.
All right, go for it.
But because I know a teensy weensy bit about you, and I was while I was writing up my questions, I was like, I'm just gonna throw in like some random questions.
Let's hear the curveball.
As if like we were just hanging out and not on the podcast. And my weird.
Tell me about your sex life.
Yeah. No, my weird question is, do you remember You're Young?
Oh yeah, dude, I played bass for You're Young.
Okay. So fucking I worked with their singer.
Alex.
For years.
Yeah. I remember because actually when you hit me up about this podcast, I went back. I'm like, oh, we've talked a bit before. And then I think you hit me about playing some shows. And you said it was Alex. Yeah. Alex. So Alex and Augie. And Augie's his brother.
Of course.
And then and all those guys are really, really good friends. I mean, I went we went to Augie's his bachelor party a while back. We went to New Orleans during Mardi Gras, like about a year ago, I guess, 2 years ago. Actually, 2 years ago, because now we have this group chat that's been going for 2 years called Scumbo, which is this group chat that we made about us going to New Orleans.
Got it.
And I think I said, let's get some gumbo, and everybody thought I said scumbo, and that became this group chat that we have now, where we have a scumbo Christmas.
That's awesome.
So every year we just had it recently.
You need to put a scumbo comp together.
Yeah, we're gonna do T-shirts. We've got like this whole like inside joke about it, so it's been going on for 2 years straight. And now Augie actually. Breaking news on this podcast. His wife is having a baby here, so they're having
Lindsay.
Yeah, Lindsay.
Yeah, well,
Lindsay.
she's the president's daughter. I worked for their
company.
I worked at the same company.
There you
Alex
go.
And Augie did.
Yeah, so
I know all those guys.
Yeah, she's having a baby soon.
Friends,
yeah, and they all work there too.
We're not friends, so it's just gonna be fucking creepy that I'm asking you because I haven't talked to.
Yeah, no, they all work together. We hang out all the time. We've got this group chat going nonstop. Like if I looked at my phone, there's probably 30 like memes that they've sent in the last hour that we've been talking.
Alex is fucking hysterical.
He's so funny.
Damn,
like
man,
I hope he's not watching because I don't want to give him a big head. But like he's just like the most.
Not watching because you think I'm creepy because I'm bringing him up and I haven't talked to him since I fucking.
He's so sexy too. They're such great guys, and they're like so. Not only with You're Young, because I did play with You're Young bass for him for a while, but before that they're in a band called The Fair and Debonair. So You're Young was a combination of The Fair and Debonair and this other band called The Author. They were both around from 2005 to 2010-ish, right? And then they combined into one big band, basically, and that's why they had 3 guitarists.
Yeah, the band was huge.
Yeah. So they, so both those bands, The Author and The Fair and Debonair, when I was before American Standards, I played for a band called The Hostage Situation. And we play with those bands all the time. And I used to book all the Different Their tours. I used to book all the Author tours, You're Young, bands like A Step Ahead and stuff like that. That's really when I was like, I had this like portion in my life where I was like, do I want to get out of music and get more into the business side of it, booking tours and doing more management type stuff? And I started going really hard on doing that for a while. And yeah, no, I've been, I mean, like I said, those are some of my best friends. And like, we not only on the business level of the bands, but now just my best friends in real life.
Yeah,
Like,
it has like no relevance to almost anybody. I was just thinking about that and I was like, fucking. I like Alex.
That's scene nostalgia.
He was kind of like way above me. Augie was like, they were both like way above. I was a fucking peon at that job, but I was always looked up to them.
Don't give him a
these
big
guys
head.
are
Come on.
fucking funny. Like I wish I was like cool enough to or old enough even. To
Yeah.
fucking,
Augie's
be
probably
friends
the
with guys.
funniest guy I know.
See, but
and he's
he's
a
so
tank,
quiet.
man. Like, so
I
Augie,
never
like,
talked to him a day at that fucking job.
yeah, they especially Alex is very much like that too. But yeah, like we'd go on these tours there, dude. We flipped a van together. We almost all died together. We played a show in New Mexico, and we were driving back in the van, and Aki and I drink occasionally. So we were drinking in the backseat of this van. Driver wasn't drinking. But we were drinking in the backseat of this van, and we heard a noise, me and Augie, and we're like, what's that, you know? And they're like, probably nothing, keep going. Hear the noise again, and then the next thing I see is like slow motion, a beer just exploding all over the place as I see sky, dirt,
Oh,
sky,
shit.
dirt. And the van is rolling down basically a slope on the side of the freeway, and then went through this big old concrete like drainage pipe and just burst through it and landed on the side. The trailer, we had a trailer that had all the gear in it, just went flying down the road. The top was like cut open, like someone took a can opener to it, because like the huge bass amp and everything destroyed it. And we were like sliding the door open, crawling out of this van that's tipped over, you know. And we're out in the middle of nowhere, and then beer is all over all of us is the thing. So like Augie's like, and none of us smoke cigarettes or anything. So we're like. He's like, we gotta smoke cigarettes before anybody gets here and finds out, you know, and thinks that we were drinking and driving because we weren't drinking and driving, you know. And we waited out there
and no police officer. They just blew up on me. I didn't fucking drink.
And we threw them like in the drainage ditch. We were out there for a good, 45 minutes before like the ambulance and cops and anybody came. A truck driver stopped behind us because they almost T-boned us. Basically what it was I think it was the trailer had blew a tire or something, and it sideswiped the van and knocked the van over the side of the freeway. So yeah, we have so many crazy stories and things like that because we've toured. Like I think I've been on the road more with those guys than anybody else. You know,
that's fucking awesome. It's really funny. I got in a car accident once. I'm not going to implicate the other person. I was driving with another person, and they were driving. I was in the passenger seat, and at this time, this was years and years and years ago. This is like right when I started. I really felt like I didn't smoke weed as a teenager at all.
Yeah.
And then I got really into it when I truly discovered it when I was like 20.
Yeah.
And then I was in the passenger seat smoking weed, and we were driving, and we got fucking rear-ended. So my first thought, as soon as we get rear-ended, is I offer them a cigarette.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, we should smoke.
Apparently
cigarettes.
that's a thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's what you do. And like they just thought I was being very nice, but
Yeah.
in reality, I was like, we need to get this smell out of here now because we're on the 10.
Yeah.
Like we're not in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like the police are gonna be here right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, cigarettes are the cure for
Apparently, I never would have thought of that. I was just thinking like, wow, like the last thing I'm going to see in my life is like Augie's face, dirt, sky, and a beer swirling around in slow motion, like we're in that like Inception or something. You know?
I don't know how that job fucking killed me.
Yeah.
They were I don't know. I'm assuming they still do. I don't know. But that office job that we all worked together, I
Yeah.
was a fucking maniac. I've talked about this on this podcast before. But like every single day at that job, I just became more miserable and more blood. Just fucking goddamn. I started it very like starry eyed and like, yeah, this is gonna be a really easy way to make really good money in like 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
By the end of my year and a half stretch there, I got promoted a few times, and I was like doing really well, and I was whatever supervisor, or just dispatcher, whatever, and fucking before like I was like Charles Manson at the end of it. I was so like.
So a few of them still are there, like Augie, Alex, and Lindsay. They're all there
Yeah.
still.
And they were very cool, and Lindsay was very nice.
But yeah, I think like
damn, I hate
Sammy was there for a while, and who else was there? Mike Cook was there from Lifelink was there for a while, and a few other guys were all there.
It was
But
crazy.
they're not there anymore. I think Nathan might have been there for a while.
They're not there anymore because
Yeah.
it's fucking soul killing, man.
Man, I will say so. Like maybe tying this back to music a bit. So like,
yeah, we should do that. You're
like,
in a band.
Yeah, that. Well, no, I'll talk about anything, man. Like that. Like honestly, so when we wrote Still Life, which was the first album, like I said, I was 25 when we were writing it. I mean, put it out when I was 26. That was that time where like I had the exact same feeling as like I went from, like I said, working at like a department store where nothing mattered. Like no thing that I could, like the worst thing I could do on any day would not affect anything in the grand scheme of time. And I didn't feel fulfilled in my job. I just felt like I was going there for a paycheck and it didn't matter, you know? Yeah. And then I went into having like more responsibilities, and I started working for basically, you know, an office job where I work now. And I had that same arc. So I had the same arc where I felt like I definitely started making more money quickly. I had these benefits like I never had before. Sure. I had more responsibilities and everything. But then I hit this plateau where I felt like, wow, I'm literally like just this cog in a machine, and I'm living this 9 to 5. I'm wearing a tie like I am now, you know? And like, this has no meaning. And it was like so defeating. And it was so like horrible to see that, like, kind of maybe this everything going back again to themes is like I would see that the people that were getting ahead weren't the people that had any technical skills or any real value to add. They're just the people that could really BS with people. Like whoever could talk the biggest game to somebody and BS was a person that was going to get ahead. And I didn't want to do that, and I wasn't willing to do that. So when we wrote Anti-Melody, when we wrote Still Life, the first album, that's really when that entire album is pretty much about that. Like feeling like you're trying your hardest in life to get somewhere better than where you were at. Because like I said, I came from a very poor family. I kind of came from this place where like my father was a construction worker for 40 years. You know, he was making nothing even at the point when he passed away. Everybody in my life prior to that, none of them had like probably even high school educations, let alone college, you know, and no one ever had anything. So like I felt like I had to do better, and I was pushing so hard, and I always felt like I was getting nowhere. And that's what I wrote Still Life about, is the idea that you keep pushing and you get so discouraged, and there's a point where you just say, this is a breaking point. I'm going to stop even trying. And most people do that, you know, but I didn't want to do that. That's why I think when I put that album out, I don't know that it landed right away, because like we were playing for people that were still like 16, 17, 18, 19 years old that had no clue what the lyrics were about.
Yeah.
And maybe musically it sounded great, but it didn't resonate as much. And now that we're a few albums down the line, this Anti-Melody is the 4th album down the line, now people still talk about Still Life, and I still get messages every couple of days from random people or emails from random people on the band page that say like, hey, this song like really resonates with me, or this really means something to me. And it's normally from Still Life. It's not from the other albums, because it is people that maybe listened to us back then and now listen to it again and now they understand it, or people that are a little bit older that like listen to it at the right time in their life, you know? Because it, like the lyrical content isn't the traditional content that you'd have for like a heavier band, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's cool that all of your albums have like a theme.
Yeah, yeah.
Like our theme is I'm sad, which is like perfect for our music. But I think it's cool that you have like a specific, like this album is about our new album is like a concept album.
Yeah.
But like for the most part, us and almost every band that I listen to is just like, yeah, I'm really fucking sad.
Yeah.
And here's a bunch of really eloquent ways to say that I'm really fucking sad.
Yeah. Well, I will say we don't have a theme in the extent that like say like a Coheed and Cambria.
Yeah.
Like it's not a storyline or Mailing into Sons of Disaster. It's not like a linear storyline.
You brought Mailing into Sons of Disaster into this.
Dude, we're deep. Yeah. The band before this, Hostage Situation. I don't know if you ever listened to that, but that was exactly what we're going for. Was that, you know? So super riffy, you know. But like, so we're not. Yeah. So there's a theme, but it's not like each one doesn't tie into each other. It's just a relative theme, you know? And I think like, I mean, that's a really good point, because I think that's something that like local artists, especially people that are new to it, that don't realize is like, now like people expect you to have a story, right? Like before you can put stuff out there and just hope it hits, and you didn't have a way to tell your story. Now like you kind of have to have a story, and if you're telling the same story over and over again, like it kind of gets old, you know? So it's like, I think like it's maybe kind of going back to like playing with the same types of bands to the same crowd. It's really easy to like do one thing and be really good at one thing. So like if like once again we're like a beatdown band and we write really angry songs about like, you know, you screw the government or something, like we can really tap into that audience and make them all like it. But when we start being more nuanced and saying like, well, there's also this other stuff, people might not agree with everything that we have, but as a whole, like it's more nuanced and has a wider appeal, you know? So like it's harder to make that catch on than it is to just say this is one thing. Like you know, like Sad Boy was something that went on for a while, and if you were a sad a band, a melodic hardcore band or a melodic band writing sad songs, you could kind of tag yourself onto this whole group of bands that were doing that, and then everybody was weaving their way through like you said earlier, like the Bandcamp tags to find those types of bands. But you're constantly finding one, then finding the next band that does even more than that one, then finding the next band that does even more than that one, and like you just recycle through them, and none of them have longevity. Yeah. So I think like the bands that, and I mean, I'm one to talk because we're not anywhere when it comes to the grand scheme of things. But I feel like the bands that do have like more staying power are the bands that can say that like we're not just this one thing, like either in sound or message. Like we're going to talk about a lot of stuff, just like in life. Like in life, you're not only sad, you're not only angry all the time, you're not only like this and this. Like there's all these different things, and if you can really make them come into one thing and make people see that or feel that, like I think you take people on a journey more than just saying like only listen to us when you're sad or only listen to us when you're mad. But that, I mean, it's also hard to do, you know, because like you're not going to land on everything. Like I said, you can be really good at one thing or you can be mediocre at a bunch of things. I don't know. Once again, we probably land somewhere in the middle.
Of course, no, but that's a perfect way to sum up American Standards. Though, is it seems that you're this perfect middle ground between too much of this or too much of this, right where like in a healthy way where you should be, not so extreme that
like
you're just
too metal for the punk kids and too punk for the metal kids. So a lot of people don't get it right away, and they're just like, I don't even want to give this a chance. And then a lot of people like respect it, and like it gets us to new crowds. Like it makes me think of like last year we played with like, for example, we did a show with Emery, which is much different than us, you know, and great guys. Also very much like an Every Time I Die experience. They're such great guys, you know. And then we went on, and the next show we played, which is a month after, was with Winds of Plague and Rings of Saturn. Complete opposite side of the spectrum, you know. And then we played with like Artreyu and O Sleeper and all these other random bands.
Okay, was playing with Artreyu one of those moments where you're talking about earlier where it's like not what you wanted it to be? Because you said like anniversary, and I was like, hey, didn't you guys do the 10th anniversary? Fucking
we did do, yeah. Thing? So we did a few shows with Artreyu. Strangely, the first show that we did with Artreyu was in Tucson. It was kind of unique because I walked up to the soundboard, and I used to listen to Artreyu like when I was younger and liked it.
Yeah,
you know?
we all did.
I hadn't heard him in a while, but like I walked up to the soundboard and I saw the sound guy. We were checking in. I was like, hey, like, you know, I'm Brandon from American Standards. We're checking in. Where do you want our stuff? He's like, oh, I'm Brandon too. I'm like, cool. So where do you want our stuff? He's like, I play drums for Artreyu. I'm like, oh, that's what you look like 10 years later. But no, he was a great guy. I know. And we did that show, and then we played the show, I think, at Club Red, which I think was actually the 10-year. And no, they were good guys. They're very personable. It wasn't as much as like anything, but it was somewhere in between there.
That's good.
I will, like, kind of funny story about them. That 10-year tour, they played with 3, 6, 9, 12, 58, 18 cabs, guitar cabs.
Fuck.
All dummy cabs, though.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And then they played with 4 bass drums and only 1 bass drum mic.
That's the thing. I remember seeing that shit, though.
The biggest setup. It was like watching The Darkness in that music video where it just keeps expanding. You keep seeing more. It's like, what the hell?
That's fucking ridiculous.
They did like a Bon Jovi cover, and it was just like,
oh man,
it was a fun show though. But like that's what like doing those kind of random like
they went like
one to another.
They went the Data. Well, I guess the Data Remember route. Data Remember went their route of like going from playing really niche music to playing like dad radio rock. Yeah. Like really, they both are perfect example. I remember hearing like I've never been a Data Remember fan, but I remember hearing like stuff off Common Courtesy and being like, this is a Data Remember? Like this could be any other radio rock band.
Yeah.
Like, and same with Artreyu. Like when fucking I Become the Bull came out, I was like, the fuck is this? Like,
you know, I mean like playing to those crowds is exactly what I'm saying. Is like there's a lot of people in that audience that have never seen us before and would never see us otherwise. and a lot of them are going to hate it, because they're just not ready for it. It's not what they're into, whatever it is. But there's also people that never would have came to an American Standard show before because they're not going to local shows or the other shows that we play that might appreciate it and might kind of open their eyes. So like when we play with like, it's weird. Like I think of like this funny one that I've told this story before, but we play with this band called Butcher Babies. I don't know if you've heard of them,
know.
but they're essentially, they sound a little bit like Slipknot. They have 2 female singers. I think both of them are like hustler pinups or something, girls. And I remember when we took that show, when we got that offer, like I was like, let's do it. And all the guys were like, just makes no sense for us. I'm like, let's just do it. And that was one of the most receptive crowds we've had here locally ever, because no one had no clue what they were getting into when they saw us. Like they were, it was like a pub rock. It was a sold out show. They were all there for Butcher Babies, and they knew what their sound was. But then they saw us, and they're like, "Holy shit!" Like we sat there like we were rock stars, like signing autographs at the merch booth. We sold more T-shirts than we ever sell at a show, because I think we just completely had this shock factor that we normally don't have.
Totally.
So I don't know. That's fun to me. Like it's discouraging as much as it's fun, because you, like I said, you play to people that are just like, what the hell is this? But then you also have the complete extreme. And I'd rather people feel strongly one way or another than just be like, whatever, totally. Next band.
All right, man. Well, that's all the shit that I have for you. Well, that's
cool.
It.
This was cool,
wrap
man.
It up. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, man, this is really fun. I'm really like, when I reached out to you, it was one of those shots in the dark where I was like, "There's no way I'm gonna fucking get the guy from American Standards on," but I'm gonna ask him because I have to. But that's the mindset, and I think it helps to be like.
I'm surprised you get the guy from Lifelink on here. That's big time in it.
You said, I mean, it's so funny because you like, obviously we all, good people are humble, but I feel like the naivety of like, this person's way bigger than they are, is sorry, Alicia just came in. That naivety of thinking that this person is way bigger than they are is super helpful. And I guess one of the things to wrap up this podcast with, like, if I'm gonna leave anybody with anything, because it just popped into my head, is like, I think naivety, and I preach this constantly, can go a really long way.
Because it makes stuff fun, though.
No, right? It doesn't make stuff fun, but when you don't know what you're up against, you're way more likely to fight.
Yeah.
And like I remember I learned that lesson from Kevin Smith, who's one of my all-time like idols too, is he was saying he would have never made Clerks had he realized, because he saw the movie Slacker by Richard Linklater, and he was like, oh my god, this dude made this in this small town in Texas that no one knows. Like if he can do it, I can do it. Turns out that was Austin, and he was already like somebody, but he didn't know that.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you're naive, but you're also hardworking and somewhat self-aware, you can get a lot more done than somebody who truly realizes what's going on and doesn't have any stars in his eyes at all and just is cynical to the whole thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think like going back to the nostalgia thing, you always want to recapture that spark that you had when everything was fresh and shiny and new.
Yeah.
Like I always think about like how it was when I first started playing music, and we would play with like some local band that I thought was the biggest band in the world, and I would, like, in my mind I thought they would come up on this huge tour bus and it'd be this sold out show, and it never turned out that way, but it was always so fun and fresh doing that, Yeah. Real quick funny story on maybe more Jason Mewes than Kevin Smith, but I was at a bar maybe a year or two ago, and Jason Mewes was there with, I'm assuming, his girlfriend or wife.
Yeah.
And he was sitting next to us, so I bought him a shot, and bartender gives him the shot, and he doesn't take it. He doesn't look over or anything, and then he gets up and walks away. I'm like, dude, Jason Mewes is an asshole.
Oh,
and then
man.
like 5 minutes later, he comes and taps me on the shoulder. He's like, I just want to let you know, I really appreciate the shot, but I've been sober for X amount of
drink.
Yeah, I've been sober for like X amount of years, so he's like, but like thank you so much and everything. Like, oh, okay, now I'm the asshole.
Yeah, no, they have a live podcast called Jay and Silent Bob Get Old, where he just tells stories about before he was sober, now he's sober. He's been sober for a number of years now.
Yeah, I had no clue when I bought him the shot, or I probably wouldn't have bought him the shot. But actually, like we tweeted each other a couple of times after that, and he was also someone that was very quick back to respond. And like, because I told him, like, man, I feel like a complete jerk now.
Dude, they're wonderful.
Like if he would have took it, I would have felt much worse after that, though.
Yeah, Kevin Smith is also up there as far as like the most influential people in my life. Like, and film was a big deal for me. Fuck, we're just gonna keep going on forever. Thank you so much for doing
Thank
the
you
show,
for having
man.
me,
I really
man.
fucking appreciate it.
This
Let's
was
go.
cool. I will come drink beers in your apartment any day, man.
Dude, that means the world to me. I would love to have you. And speaking of which, we'll go finish those other beers right
Cool.
now. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'm like, this month is going to be fucking insane. I've already been posting about it on Instagram. I've got some really fantastic guests lined up. I've got a lot of people going on this month, and I have even more shit planned for next month. It's going to be Facebook Live. Hopefully some YouTube will be in there too. This is going to be 2018 hopefully is going to really be some fucking years. There'll be some days of action.
Really, beers.
Yeah, it's going to be some beers.
We know what you have on your mind.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. I always say, like, if you've made it this far in the show, I really, 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 truly appreciate you. And if you're just using the show to go to sleep to, like I do a lot with a lot of the podcasts I listen to.
What's that
equally valued.
ACM or what's that called? Like
ASML.
There you go. Like, yeah.
ASMR. Sorry.
Something
I'm fucking
ASL.
Yeah.
Just going back to chat room days. What's that? Age, sex, live.
It's a. All right. Well, see you guys later. Thank you so much. I need an official sign off for this, but I don't have one. So bye.
Steak.